so we'll try and move quickly. First thing on our agenda is to read our lovely opening statement. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, business, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. Any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days of the Development Review Commission, within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its final decision. All right, so with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, on my left, Commissioner Andrew Johnson, Commissioner Philip Amorosi, Commissioner Scott Sumners. I am Chairman David Lyon. To my right is Vice Chair Michael DiDomenico, Commissioner Michelle Schwartz, and Commissioner Thomas Brown. By way of city staff, we have gracing us here tonight Ryan Levake, Saparna Dasgupta, Steve Abrahamson, Karen Stovall, Obina Kingsby, Lee Jimenez, Dalton Guerra, and Joanna Berry. All right, so first item of business is a motion regarding the approval of our meeting minutes from our prior meeting, August 13th. May I hear a motion regarding those minutes, please?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the study session minutes and regular meeting minutes for August 13th, 2019 as drafted.
Do I hear a second, please?
Second.
Motion to approve from Vice Chair DiDomenico and seconded by Commissioner Amorosi. All those in favor by show of hands, please. And abstaining?
Yeah, I wasn't in attendance.
Okay. All right, motion passes 5-0 with Commissioner Sumners and Commissioner Johnson abstaining. Next up, folks, we have our consent agenda. These are cases which we have reviewed and decided we would approve unless someone here wishes to have them heard and we can make comment on them. So I'm going to read the consent agenda, and if there's a case here that you wish to have heard and you wish to speak on, please make a flap about it. We're looking for you. So on the consent agenda, we have Roosevelt Corner, U-Cars, AAA Auto Repair, and Agave Center Self-Storage. Does anyone wish to have any of those heard? Seeing none, we will keep our consent agenda as written. May I hear a motion regarding its approval, please?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, motion to approve from Vice Chair DiDomenico and seconded by Commissioner Scott Sumners. All those in favor by show of hands, please. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, so folks, that leads us straight into Virtue Vape. So at this time, we'd like to invite our applicant to come forward and tell us about their case.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. It's our pleasure to be. Yep.
Sorry, I forgot to say, please state your name for the record.
Okay, yeah. My name is Catalina Jimenez. I'm the CFO and owner of the Virtue Bay LLC. Well, again, thank you. Thank you very much for having us here. We as a Virtue Bay, it's a pleasure to be in this city and in this state, which we just moved a couple months ago. And this city, and actually the city of Tempe and the state of Arizona has received us with open arms. So we really appreciate that. We will start, this is the clip. So I want to start telling you about a little bit about our business, how we start, and why we're here. So our overview is Virtue Bay LLC, which we call a VB, began in operations as a retail store and a very, very small store in Miami, Florida. And that was because we moved to Miami from New York with my husband, and my husband has a very, very bad problem with his teeth. So we went to a doctor, and he said that he has to quit smoking tobacco products like cigarettes, where he was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. So after that, he moved to electronic cigarettes, which was a great improve for him and for his health and for all our family. And now he's 100% well. He doesn't have any problems. And we started this business in 2013 because in Miami was not very popular. In New York was very popular, the vape stores. But in Miami, when we decided to move to Miami, they didn't have any stores. So we saw the need to start a business there and to open our store and make the products for himself and for everybody else. The companies are very small and start growing because a lot of people start quitting smoking cigarettes, like regular cigarettes, and pass to or switch to electronic cigarettes. We don't sell our liquids or our products. We don't have any nicotine in our products. We don't sell products with any nicotine. It's just the habit for the hand to mouth. So that habit is actually, the brain actually say, okay, that person is using something and it's pretty much tricking the brain with no danger. So that is actually what we do. So our product is just the liquid. That's what we sell, only the liquid. We don't even sell the devices. We just sell the liquid. And that is what helps people to switch for regular cigarettes to electronic cigarettes. Since then, Vape started growing, and our development and flavoring, we have the best mixology in the United States, and our flavors are the best. We only use organic flavors, and we actually import organic flavors from Italy, from Croatia, from the UK to here just to make the best flavors in the United States. The company sells e-liquid to all distributors and retailers around the United States, but 90% of our products is export to the UK and Europe because our quality is very good. So I know that now everybody is very concerned about the JUUL and what is the difference, and the miscommunication and the lack of education of people is what is doing this business to be in the news every day and to have a very bad reputation. So that's why we're here, to educate people, because we already did this in Miami, we already did this in North Carolina, and in every city that we have present this business is already passed. And we have stores there and we have a company there because we are doing something that is completely legal and is good for everybody, of every citizen that wants to quit smoking to electronic cigarettes. So what is the difference? Well, we don't sell JUUL. We don't sell JUUL in our store because JUUL has a benzoic acid, which is the small cartridges has benzoic acid, which is very bad for your health. And if you go to online and you can Google it and you can see the benzoic acid is the main component of the JUUL, which make no smoke, no any vape. So when you vape it, you see that is no vape allowed. I mean, you don't produce any vape. And actually it's very, very addictive and very bad for your health. And that's what you feel like, that you itchy in your throat and your lungs, and you feel like very, very raised up. Is because of benzoic acid. We don't have any of that product in our products. We don't use that, we don't buy it. And the city of Tempe actually have all the list of the suppliers that we buy, and we don't buy benzoic acid, and is no benzoic acid in any of the products. And that is the main difference. If you go to Google and you research what is the difference between JUUL and regular vape or traditional vape, that is the main product. That is the main ingredient that differentiates vape to JUUL. So our products, actually, the only thing that our products have is vegetable glycerin, which is in every single product and every single food product that you guys eat, and everybody eats, and I eat, I give it to my kids, I give it to my family, to my parents, to everybody else, and you guys actually eat a lot of products that has vegetable glycerin. And flavoring. The same flavoring that we use in the cakes, we buy flavorings for cakes companies, for the same suppliers for the cake companies. So we don't, and cookies companies and cake companies, and that's the only thing that we use. We mix it together and we put it in a bottle. That's the products that we sell. We don't sell anything that is dangerous for the health. We don't sell anything that is actually is gonna give you any effect. We have a medical insurance for 5 years, since 2013, or actually 6 now. 2013, we were the first company to have medical insurance, which the city of Tempe has the documents of medical insurance and the records. And we don't have not even one case that somebody has any claim. Not even one, because we don't have any danger products or any hazard products that can actually be against to any health or any allergies or anything of the kind. So what we do? So normally what we do is we have a storefront and a little bit of a space where we assemble or light assemble our products, which is, what is a light assemble? You can do it yourself, is the main thing. Anybody can do that. We do it in, thousands of bottles, but anybody can do it. And it's so easy, and it's not any equipment, it's not anything like chemicals or anything that actually affect or change the natural of the product. So this is what we do. We buy flavors, like if you go online, you can see Flavor West, Capella flavors, the same flavors that everybody buys for the cakes, for cookies, for any other food product. It's the same products that we use, which you can see this is one of our pictures for our store in North Carolina. We buy organic vegetable glycerin. We buy those drums, which is the same product that everybody uses in every single food product in the market. Did you see the ingredients? It's a lot of products with vegetable glycerins approved by the FDA. Then we mix it both together. We put it in that little machine. We dump it in the bottle. We put it in that bottle. And if you see that bottle, this is one of our best seller product, which is Milk Drop. You see that it's any of our labels are attracted to children. We don't have anything. Actually, the FDA did an inspection in our store in Florida, and the inspector went to and inspect every single label. Every single one. We have more than 100 labels, more than 100 products, and not even one was attracted to children, because that's what we do. We used to have it and we changed everything, and now those are our products. So any minor can come and say, oh, I like this product because it looks like a cartoon. Oh, I don't know. We don't have pancakes or anything of the kind. We don't have any of those products. We have very, very simple products that is not attracted to children. And our labels are very simple with all the specifications that the FDA requires. And we have already 2 inspections from the FDA, and we pass it all with no problem. And actually, the city of Tempe has all the records. And then after the bottles is made, it's labeled, it's capped, it goes to a box, and it's sent to a client. That's what we do. And if the client is in the front store, we sell it to the front store of the client. The same product. That's it. That's the only thing that we do. This is one of our front door storefronts. So you see, is people we have. So the idea that when we create Virtue Vape, my husband and I were smokers. So we want a place that people can come, feel comfortable, and try to quit the smoking, because that's what we wanted. That's what we did, and that's what we wanted for other people in the safest way that we can do. And that's what we do. So people come, they relax. It's more like a lounge, and people come with the same problem that we have, with the same habit that we had, and come and talk and relax, buy the products, something that they really want, the flavors that they really like, and just be there and relax and be thankful, because we have one more day in our lives and no smoking and no actually throwing our life in a pack of cigarettes. We actually doing something good, doing with very, very good products, with illegal products, with a use that is legal in every single place in this country, with the great products, with organic products. So, and in the retail stores and in all our wholesalers and distributors, we always attach the identification with the invoice, because the FDA actually required for us, because we already have the inspection, and that was in the last inspection, that was the only thing that we requested, to have a copy of the driver license attached to the invoice. So in every single record that we have, We have the name of the person and the attachment with the driver license. We don't sell anything online. We have a process online, but we don't sell anything online just because of that reason. The FDA said you guys cannot sell anything online because we want to have the identification. And we want to know that you are not selling any closed devices. And that's what we do. We just sell liquid, and people come with the electronic cigarettes that they buy in other places, and we make the product for them to be enjoyable, to try to quit smoking in a legal way. Thank you. That's our presentation. This is our business. As I told you, we are in this business in 2013, not even one complaint. Actually, thousands of lives having been saved for us because people actually come to our store saying, thank you, my husband stopped smoking and my life changed completely. I love the flavor, I love the smell because, I mean, if you go actually to one of our stores, you can see that the smells is so good. It smells like a cake, like a store, like a bread. It's just very good because that's what we do. That's what the products that we use. And everything is organic, is natural, is good, gluten-free. We are very, very careful with the products that we use and what we do.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for your presentation. Commissioners, do you have any questions for our applicant? Commissioner Sanders.
Just one question. Thanks so much for your presentation. Do you sell tobacco of any kind at your store?
No, any kind. We don't sell any products that have nicotine. So this is something that we actually, and I want to clarify this because our product is like in this group of tobacco products, right? Because it's the DMA regulation that the FDA released in 2008, saying that all tobacco, all the products that are going into electronic cigarettes is tobacco products. However, our product is zero nicotine, it doesn't have any nicotine. So if it doesn't have any nicotine, why is a tobacco product? It's not a tobacco product because it doesn't have any nicotine. When you use a tobacco product, it's because you're using nicotine. But now this is the discussion that is in the FDA website, and you can, I mean, you want to go to the FDA website, they say that even if 0 milligrams of nicotine, is still considered a tobacco product. But that's just, I mean, all our lawyers and everybody in the vape industry is trying to fight this because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it doesn't have any tobacco, it doesn't have any nicotine, doesn't mean that it has tobacco. But the FDA, just because it's using in electronic cigarette, so they say that it's a tobacco product.
Okay. Other questions for our applicant? Commissioner Johnson, sorry.
So the product that you sell, it is not, I'm assuming, in a disposable, one-use kind of product like a Juul?
No.
Okay. So the product that people purchase at your store, they can take home with them and put into the device that they use to vape. Can they at that point mix nicotine in with your product or other substances?
Well, we try, I mean, to educate our clients, and that's what we do. Educate people to trying to figure out a way that they can quit the smoking without using nicotine. However, I mean, nicotine is a legal product that it sells in the market. You can buy nicotine in Walgreens, actually, whatever you want. So it's just very difficult to control what people do afterwards and after they buy the nicotine, the product, I'm sorry. And if they buy nicotine and they can mix it together themselves, it's not safe. We don't recommend it. We actually say to people, don't do it, but it's the same. I mean, you can mix your coffee with nicotine and the coffee company doesn't have the responsibility for it. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty much whatever people do with their own lives is pretty much the responsibility. But we, in our store, we always encourage people to do electronic cigarettes without any nicotine because the effect is pretty much the same.
Thank you. And is this going, you said you were just recently relocating to Tempe?
Yeah, correct.
Is this going to be your only assembly location now?
No, we have one in North Carolina and we have one in Florida as well. But we want to have one in the West Coast because it's more efficient for us to ship to the West Coast. I mean, it's cheaper for us to ship to California and to all the states in the West Coast.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Amorosi.
So if you have no tobacco on site. Why do you not permit people have to be at least 18 to come into your store?
Because the demand regulations with the FDA are very clear, saying that even if it's zero nicotine, we are in this main DIM regulation with the FDA. So even if it's zero nicotine, we are in the group of tobacco products, because it's what they said. And if you go on the FDA website, it's pretty clear. So even if it's zero nicotine, we have to be in the same rules that it has nicotine. But we encourage our clients to don't use nicotine, and we don't use nicotine in our assembled products. It's just the FDA have the regulation that if it's zero nicotine, but you use it in an electronic cigarette, is considered as tobacco product.
Thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
Early in your presentation, you had a slide where you showed a little sequence of flavors being added to something, et cetera.
Yeah.
Did I see the words ethylene glycol on that one? You showed a barrel and you said you mix organic. Yeah.
Vegetable glycerin.
Okay. Go. There's the vegetable glycerin. Before
Okay.
that, you showed another slide that had some different. Yeah,
That one?
keep going back.
Missed it.
It had the word
Right
ethylene.
there. Propylene glycol.
Propylene glycol.
Glycon. Yeah.
Is that the same stuff that's in my car?
No. That is the same thing that it has a lot of, is the same thing that they have a lot of food products. It's organic product, it's not propylene glycol that you have in your car, it's completely different. I don't know how many people here haven't been in a casino. So the casino actually has propylene glycol in their environment, just to have people and in the food and everything else, just to keep it like to calm the anxiety. So I don't know if I'm clear with this. So is propylene glycerin is just pretty much vegetable glycerin, but in different plant. But it's exactly the same. You can find it in every single product that you eat, or most of the products that you eat, and you go to see the ingredients, vegetable glycerin and propylene glycerin are the same. It's just different products in different plants. It's organic, is free of hazard. It is not dangerous, it has a product against the body or to the health of anybody.
We contact the FDA for a full report on.
No, I was trying to figure out what it was.
Okay.
And
Contacted Google.
and
Yeah, he knows everything.
You contact Google?
Okay.
Commissioner Schwartz has brought it up on mine. It's a stabilizer or something.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. It's just different plant. So it's a little bit thicker. So it gives different texture because some flavors that we use are very liquid. So in order to vape it, we need a little bit thicker. So we use 1 or 2 drops in order to get it thicker because it's different plant. It's different plant extraction.
I have a question for the whole crowd.
Can you ask me that question first? I'm not sure if I like this.
Go ahead.
I, of course, heard the same stories that we all heard about vaping. I understand Massachusetts banned it today. So we all have the same questions. Has anyone here vaped here without using nicotine? And if so, what's the point?
He's actually one of our clients that
Well,
she wants to come.
You work, I assume. With,
Yeah, I do. Why do I do it?
is it just like candy? Is it flavor?
Yeah, it's the one I use
Am I allowed to do this?
French toast lemon.
Ma'am, if you're going to
We-
speak, can we ask you to come to the
Oh, yeah.
microphone and state your name?
I'm just trying to
This is-
differentiate between
this
the
is a
vaping that
little
apparently
unusual, but-
is toxic around the nation.
I wanted to see, she's here because she had a very back problem. Her health. So she came to our stores and we help her. And she is very grateful, and that's why she's here. We didn't want her to speak, but now that you ask.
Let me explain. I'm just trying to differentiate between what you're selling, which you say contains no nicotine and is virtuous, versus the stuff that we all have been hearing about.
Sure.
And
Right.
so give us your pitch.
Yes, my name is Kenna Smalley, and I was a smoker for 25, 30 years. And 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 25, 30 you know, of course, after all that time, I had a problem with coughing and, you know, just in poor health from smoking. And I met these people and I started smoking their product, and I found a flavor that I liked. They helped me, you know, with what flavor I would like. And I've been on that for the last year and a half now.
It helped you quit and you found it pleasant?
I have no desire for cigarettes, and I'm fine with the nicotine. I could imagine not vaping at all, but it's kind of a feel-good thing. You know, just like when you were smoking, you know, it did something for you. The vaping does something for me too. It's enjoyable to inhale and have all the poof, you know. So that's why I do it.
All right.
But since I've used their product, I don't smoke cigarettes at all.
All right, thank you. All right, Commission, any more questions for our applicant? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Abrahamson. Yes, please have a seat for a moment. We'll ask you to come back up in a moment. If you... So we've changed the way we set this up, and we do our public comment after our staff report, if you'd oblige us.
That's what happens when you miss a meeting or two. Good evening, members of the commission, Chairman Lyon. My name is Steve Abrahamson. I'm a planner with the city of Tempe. This case before you is for Virtue Vape. It's located at 1845 East Broadway Road in the Commercial Shopping and Services District. It's a plaza that has a couple of pad tenants. One of them is Joe's Italian Ice, and the other one's a Burger King. And within the plaza, there's I think it's Royal Taj Indian Foods. Used to have the courts, and at present, or used to also have Max at Pawn. That's where this Virtue Vape location is going to be, is where Virtue, or where Max at Pawn used to be. The use that is being requested is for tobacco retailer. There is no other category that vape would fit into, so we've been running vape through for use permits for tobacco retailing for last several years. Move on to the next one. Thank you. We've evaluate a use permit based upon 5 criteria. And on those 5 criteria, we feel that this use meets the criteria, and therefore staff is recommending approval. I could go through the criteria if you wish, but...
That's all right.
Okay. Beyond that, we did have 3 calls regarding this case. One was a call of inquiry. They just wanted to know what it was about. The second one was a call that indicated opposition to the request. And the third call was actually from Mimo's Hookah, which is also in the center. And they were opposed to the request in that it is competition. We also have an email that is in your packet, or actually was handed out earlier, in opposition. Given that they meet the 5 criteria, staff is recommending approval of this request. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to field those.
All right, Commissioners, question for staff.
I got a question.
Commissioner Moreau.
Mr. Abrahamson, so because it's a tobacco permit, if they wanted to add tobacco products after the permit, they'd be allowed to do that?
You know, that's a sticky wicket, Commissioner Amorosi. I would look at it that it is a tobacco retailing permit. However, they have indicated in their request that they are selling vape products. So I think the use permit would probably have to come back in for a reevaluation if they actually sold tobacco or tobacco-related products, such as cigarettes and cigars.
Right. And that's part of the permit. That's written down.
We can make that an additional condition if you wish,
I would like that.
as long as the applicant is in agreement.
All right. Thank you. Let's do that.
All right, so now I have a question. Can the language of that be such that it includes nicotine products that could be added to vape juice?
Certainly.
Would you be agreeable to that? Okay. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Abrahamson?
Sorry, I
Commissioner Brown.
have two more questions for the applicant, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, let's come back to that then. We'll come back to you. Thank you, Mr. Abrahamson.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, now we come to the fun part, which is public comment time. I have one card from someone here who wishes to speak. If anyone else wishes to speak on this case, please find one of these cards, fill it out, get it to our staff, and they'll filter it up to me. I have, I think, Arthur Leibowitz. Now, before you get going, Arthur, let me say how we'd like to do things today. There's a lot of folks who want to speak today. We don't want to take forever. So we're going to give everyone 3 minutes. When you get to 3 minutes, I'm going to give you a signal, at which point I'd like you to take one sentence to wrap it up. This is America. We respect each other's time and process. We don't shout over each other. We listen to each other. And this is your time. So, Mr. Leibowitz.
Thank you. My name is Arthur Lovitz, and I am a citizen of Tempe. I'm also the principal at Tempe High School. I come not bearing any official recommendation from the Tempe Union High School District. I was actually here for another purpose. Tempe High School is located at Broadway and Mill. I just, having been principal at Tempe High School and principal at many schools for many years, I don't find any virtue in vaping. And anti-vaping is an issue and a campaign in our school and our district. And while I admire and appreciate the conditions that have been placed on 18-year-olds and non-nicotine, going down the vaping road is a bit of a slippery slope. It is definitely an issue in high schools across the country. Thank you.
1 second. Any questions for our speaker? Well, okay, that takes care of that. Anyone else wishing to speak on this case? All right, I will close the public comment section, and we'll invite our applicant to come back to the stand if you would, and you can respond to the remarks that you've heard both from staff and from our commenters.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond. I actually have 3 children myself, and I understand the concern. And we actually have a campaign in our store. We don't hire anybody that is younger than 18 years old in our store. We don't allow anybody in our store, not even a companion, which is younger than 18 years old. I don't like seeing kids using vape products, but most likely because they're using Juul. What is happening in the high schools, and 90%, and you can correct me, 90% of, I can say 99% to be more exact, of the kids that are using vape products are using the Juul because it's very addictive, it's very comfortable to use it in the pockets, in the book bags, and nobody can see it, and they cannot get caught because it's impossible to see on the small devices. Our devices are big devices. People that use vaping products, I mean, our traditional vaping products, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but are big devices that you cannot put in your pocket. You cannot put in your book bag. Is not possible because they're big and they actually leak and they are not that comfortable at the closed devices. So we encourage kids after they have 18 years old and older, don't use Juul anymore. You want to quit Juul? It's the best thing that you can do. Small devices are not good. They have benzonic acid, which is very bad for your health. You can look it up. And actually the campaign should be don't use vape products, should be don't use basic acid, which is the worst for your health. And I 100% agree with you. And I cannot be more concerned about young people actually vaping. And my kids, and I have a 21 years old kid, and she actually vaped 0 nicotine. And we encourage her at all other friends that she has to don't use your, because it's the worst for your health and the worst for you, for everything. It's like a cigarette. So I appreciate that you bringing that to us because it's our campaign as well.
All right, questions for our applicant? Commissioner Brown.
Two quick questions. Yes, please. Around town, you'll see a lot of smoke shops that have been approved in the past, and they have a bad habit of putting additional advertising on A-frames out on the sidewalk. Do you understand the restrictions of Tempe's advertising and know that that's not permitted?
Well, I think we have to get like a more education support from the city of Tempe that what we can do and what we cannot do, but definitely we will follow all the rules and regulations that the city of Tempe will have. We no question about it.
I didn't quite catch what you said. I'm just asking if what your signage is going to consist of. Will it only be the sign in the building? You understand that freestanding A-frames are not.
Said she would comply with all the rules.
Thank you.
Yeah, we comply with all the rules. We are now, I mean, this permit hasn't been like a long time, so we haven't been like back and forth. So we will comply with all the rules and regulations that the city of Tempe will have. They haven't been very strict with us, and we are following all the rules that are actually saying that we have to comply.
Okay, second quick question. I've asked this of other applicants who have similar stores, smoke shops. If recreational use of marijuana for some reason becomes more acceptable, and we lose some of the limitations we have now on locating what are now medical marijuana shops, would you commit to not being also a seller of recreational marijuana?
Yeah, definitely. We don't have a license for marijuana, and I don't think that we will apply for that.
I'm just looking at the slippery slope that Principal Leibowitz recommended.
Well, I mean, in Florida and in North Carolina, it's allowed to do it, and we don't do it. We don't even make a marijuana or recreational marijuana or anything.
Thank you.
That related with it. No cartridges, no nothing.
Any other questions? We'll thank you. If you take a seat, please. All right, Commission. What do you think? Opinions, motions? Commissioner Johnson.
I guess I'll just make a comment. I'm not that comfortable with this use, but I don't have a good argument as to why this one should be allowed as opposed to others that are allowed within the areas that would be appropriate for regarding the zoning. Although I until I think other laws catch up and we get more headlines of negative impacts, I wouldn't vote against this tonight, I don't think.
Other comments? Commissioner Moreau.
Yes, before tonight, I thought all vaping was the same, but it seems like this is something new. And if there's no tobacco and there's no salts and it doesn't look like a jewel, and I don't see any reason why they can't occupy that space and manufacture their product. So I'm going to be voting for it.
So I'll jump in real quick and say I feel roughly the same. Thank you for your comment. So we hear a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Virtue Vape, that says ZUP 190234.
Any additional stipulations?
With the stipulation that there will be no tobacco or nicotine products sold on premises.
Okay, motion from Commissioner Amorosi. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Johnson. All those in favor by show of hands, please. And opposed? Motion passes 6-1 with Commissioner Brown in dissent. All right, thank you. All right, next up we have Valvoline Tempe. Sorry.
I'd like that little cute microphone. That's the fun one. For starters, DRC, thank you guys for donating your time and all your efforts. This is a tough job and a tough task, and kudos to you guys. My name is Walt Brown, and I apologize, I haven't memorized this speech. I wrote it in the car while we were coming down. I own a company called Diversified Partners. We've been in the Valley here for 30 years. We've developed 1 million square feet in Tempe and 6 million square feet across the Valley. I'm the physical guy that owns this property, and I felt it was important for me to come versus to send a high-powered zoning attorney, because the work that we've done, the neighborhood discussions that we've had, and the proposed user. What we bring to you is a project, and I've got the user is going to come up and have a small presentation. I'm going to make this quick. I just want to kind of give you a little outline. The user is going to invest $2 million into this corner, and we all made a business decision to scrape the entire site and start over to reinvest in the community. The company is Valvoline, and it's a 155-year-old company that has cutting-edge technology. It's progressed 155 years, and it's not the world that we used to live in when we think of servicing our car. The company's investing into the corner, the community, in fact. You're going to hear a little bit about that. And we're sandwiched between two existing uses, a Walgreens and a discount tire. So we've got some limitations to what we can do versus creating a 5 or a 7 acre Sprouts, Wild Oats, or something to that effect, which you may hear some of that from some of the neighbors. I have 3 different teams here to talk tonight. The first is the tenant, who's going to go over the proposed project. The second, and then I believe that we're going to have a staff presentation. I think Lee will get up and talk about that. And then after that, we've brought our marketing and leasing team, because I think there might be some knowledge that the community and the people that live close by, that they really need to know and to understand what we have done as a company and as a 30-year Arizona development company that we've done over the last year and prior to that to try to bring great product. That leasing team can help answer some of those questions. We've offered, prior to that, we've offered some companies that we would share in construction cost, we'd share in partnerships to try to bring what the certain community that lives close by said they wanted. I personally, and everybody on my staff, has read every one of these letters from the neighbors, every single one of them. We've read them all. We have spent the time and the effort to do what I would say is the right thing. And I think when they hear that, they'll understand it. And then some of the facts, you're going to hear a little bit about traffic. When we bought the property, their traffic impact, according to the previous owner, was they were getting 5,000 visits a week between their 3 uses, the auto repair facility, the convenience store, and the gas. And what you're going to hear from Valvoline is their demand and use is 300 to 450 cars a week, 450 being peak. So traffic went from 5,000 vehicles a week down to less than 1/10 of that. I think our team's going to demonstrate that. We've also, we've brought in a consultant, Dave Rickert, who most of you know, has been in the Valley for 30 years, and he's going to talk just a little bit more, because we don't really understand why we're not on consent. And I think my notes really talk about that we're probably not on consent because the staff really wants the city residents, the community residents, to really know what we've done. So I think we've got that team assembled, and we're going to try to be quick, but we'll get Valvoline up here to make a short presentation. And I think last but not least, Staff's stipulations. The tenant has agreed to 100% of staff's stipulations. Not some of them, not a portion of them. Every staff stipulation, if this project is approved, Valvoline has committed to 100% of them. So I appreciate your time and thank you. And if I could get Ken up here.
Good evening. My name is Kent Lupton. I'm with Valvoline. I actually am in the valley. I live up the road just a few miles. I appreciate the time, council, and look forward to working with you in the neighborhood as well. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. That way we won't be here for too long. But as Walt mentioned, Valvoline's been around for a long time. I know most everybody here has to have heard the name before, over 150 years. We actually started the Valvoline Instant Oil Change in 1986. We now have, between franchises and corporate owned, we have over 1,200 locations and growing. Our mission is to provide quick, easy, trusted oil changes and preventive maintenance with speed and precision and get customers back on the road quickly and safely. You can also see there that we poll about 250,000 customers every year. And last year, in May of 2018, we received a 4.6 rating from those customers. One of the things that Valvoline has been very proud of, and that is our work within the community and the environment. Valvoline was going green probably before a lot of people were even thinking about green. We're very committed to the community and to being a socially responsible partner. 100% of the materials that are generated in our facility are recycled. We do our own recycling as well. There are no in-ground storage tanks. There's very minimal energy and water usage. We also currently comply with all of the energy regulations, even those regulations up in Washington, which, if you're familiar, are very, very strict. Minimal exterior lighting. All the lighting is LED. The lighting does not protrude into streets or it's contained and controlled, so you don't see the lights as you're driving down the road. We have a full basement. That full basement is is surrounded by a liquid proof membrane, and the building is built to contain the liquids, whereas most buildings are not. Most buildings are built to not allow liquid in. We have a membrane so that there is something that happens, nothing exits the building. All of the water and everything that is used in the water or in the building is processed through an oil water separator as it exits. The air compressor is in a individual room. It's very quiet. There's no noise. All the landscaping and the irrigation is professionally maintained. Typically, and you'll see some pictures. You'll see this is in Spring, Texas. This is not what our building is going to look like, but I thought some pictures would be nice. So our typical business hours are 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sometimes it's earlier, 7 a.m. to 6 or 6:30, but that's a general. We are a drive-through service. There are no appointments, no drop-offs. There's nothing overnight. Everything is performed in the building. The service takes about 15 minutes. And as Walt alluded to, we on a national average have about 46 cars per day, which is about 1 car per 15 minutes. So over a week's time, if we hit that with this store, what's the quick math? It's a little over 200 cars per week. So if we double, we have a location in North Phoenix. It does 86 cars a day. So that's Walt's number is 450. That's probably where he got that number. I think I may have mentioned that before. So very low traffic generator. There's no overnight parking on site. All of the parking is for employees only. There's no outdoor storage. The delivery schedule is during the day. It's with a truck that's approximately 26 feet in length. That truck brings in and through the side of the building delivers the oil, and then we have another truck that brings out that comes out and takes the oil from the building to recycle. All the dumpster enclosure finishes match the building. And as mentioned prior to, and I'll talk about it when I go through the elevations, but we are definitely committed to the city and to the community as far as working with them to make this a building that they can be proud of. So the services we do offer obviously the oil change, which I mentioned, 15 minutes on average. And as someone who has had the oil change, it is really quick. We do also transmission fluid, radiator fluid replacement, headlight, tail light, air filter, fuel system, serpentine belt, battery replacement, air conditioning, tire rotation, differential, windshield wiper and fluid. There is zero exhaust, tire, brake, or paint sales or services in this building. So there's no fumes, there's nothing that's damaging in that way. In most of these services, we can get the job done in 15 minutes. Sometimes, like with a tire rotation, that's the only time that someone would get out of the car. And then we have a lobby that they can go into and get a drink, sit down and wait. And typically a tire rotation is about 20 minutes. So if you get an oil change and a tire rotation, it's a little over half hour. One of the nice things that's kind of cool about our facilities is that we have a car cam. So as you're setting the car, the technicians bring this monitor over to you, and there's 4 different screens that you can look at to see what's going on underneath your car, in front of your car, around your car. All of the technicians have 270 hours of training. We do an 18-point maintenance check for free with every oil change. There's typically, for a 3-bay facility, which this is going to be, there's 7 full-time and 3 part-time positions when we open. One of the things that we do that I consider a real benefit to the community is our employee benefit program. The employees that are at our store level have the same benefits as any executive at Valvoline. We have an employee hands-on employee assistant program. We have relocation opportunities. And the big piece here for me when I started working for Valvoline was the promotion from within. Our operations team consists of about 90 people, and it's growing. And there's only one person that I know of out of that 90 that did not come from the store level. So we do a great job, and I'm very proud of the fact that we hire from within. So real quick, this was, and these next slides we had at the neighborhood meeting as well. For those, I don't know if there's anybody in here that showed up there, but this is just a quick snapshot of the site plan, the landscaping plans. Now I will tell you that these, may change a little bit depending on those conditions that have been talked about that Lee sent out. We still have not had the chance to make those revisions. And if there's any questions, definitely can talk about that. Then we have the elevations. And again, these elevations are going to change as well, because one of the conditions was to match the brick to the discount station, and also a little bit of what the gas station used to look like before it was demolished. So those are all conditions that Valvoline has no problem. Like Walt mentioned, we're 100% on board with this. Like I said, I'm in the community. I live in the community. My kids go to Corona. So I'm excited to work with the community and look forward to answer any questions that they might have. That's really what I have to say. The building, it's a new building, and if you look at it from an airplane, it's in a V, so it's kind of cool. But anyway, so that's my presentation. I'll go ahead and hand it off to I don't remember who's next. Anybody?
If you guys think we need the marketing team, we can have them speak now, or we can have them speak after we're done as public comment, after we've heard staff present.
Truthfully, I don't think that there's much of a call for it, but if we find it's necessary, or if that's something you wish to do, I mean, we wouldn't stop you. It's your right.
He's here if you need him.
Okay.
You may need him.
All right. Thank you.
So then it would be Lee.
You heard the man.
Good evening, Commission, Chair Lyon, Vice Chair Domenico. My name is Lee Jimenez. I'm a senior planner in the Community Development Department. Tonight. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to reiterate the facts of the case. So Valine Tempe is proposed on the southeast corner of Warner and South McClintock in the Altamira Plaza, which is located in the PCC1 Planned Commercial Center Neighborhood District. The site is located within the boundaries of the Corona South Tempe character area. The requested entitlements by Valvoline is a use permit to allow vehicle repair in the PCC1 zoning district, and then also a development plan review, which includes a single-story building with proposed uses that include oil changes and minor vehicle repair within a 4,100 square foot building on 0.91 acres of lots. The use permit criteria that was used to evaluate this project are on the screen, and staff's recommendation is based on not meeting criteria number 3, which is being in conflict with city adopted plans in the general plan. What's on the screen is the latest site plan and context area site plan of the proposed development. As you can see, the existing driveways will remain. They will be upgraded with pavers, and access to the service bay areas is from the south, and then exit to the north. There's a screen wall proposed on the north end, which is the primary reason is to screen the service bays. The landscape plan provides for all the required street trees and landscape island trees, with exception to one landscape island, which is conditioned in the staff report. It's this island in question where there's a missing tree, and the reason is the lighting conflict with the light post that's proposed. So the condition would require that they first locate the tree and then locate the light post. These are the latest elevations for the proposed project. Staff, should the project be approved, staff has recommended a condition of approval to use the same type of masonry used on adjacent sites and what was used on the previous development, which is a red brick masonry along with some arch elements. Here we have the street elevations. I'm not quite sure why it's looking this way. And we have our renderings of the proposed facility. So there was a neighborhood meeting that was held on August 29th. This neighborhood meeting was voluntary and recommended by staff in comments provided back in May of 2019. The meeting took place at 5:30 at the Arizona Community Church, which is located at 9325 South Rural. There were 7 members of the public who attended. The meeting consisted of a roundtable presentation and discussion. There were 2 neighborhood attendees who left a comment card with the applicant in support of the project at the end of the meeting. And then the applicant received a follow-up email from someone else from the public who provided a neutral comment in regards to the project. So in summary, the public input and comments that we received, I've received 85 in opposition, 4 in support, and 2 neutral comments. The consensus of the opposition was primarily based on the conflict with the character area plan. They felt that there was a lot of city resources and their time that was put into this character area in which this project does not align with. So staff's recommendation is for denial. Although the project meets the development standards under the Zoning and Development Code, the project does not fulfill the goals and objectives of the land use element and the goals identified in the General Plan 2040. The project doesn't meet the objectives and placemaking guidelines of the Corona South Tempe Character Area Plan. And the proposed project does not meet approval criteria number 2 and 3 of the use permit in regards to aligning or being in conflict with the adopted plans of the city, including the general plan. Should the project be approved, the unique conditions of approval will apply to the elevations, where staff is requesting similar architecture, brick arch elements that's been used at the Discount Tire to the south. It's also been used at the Walgreens to the east, and it was also used on the previous development. Other conditions of approval are related to the landscape island and the required tree that I mentioned earlier, and also the location of the light poles for the parking lot in regards to the location of the trees. And then the other unique condition of approval is in regards to the use permit. So should it be approved, limiting the hours of operation to 7 in the morning to 7 p.m. in the evening on a daily basis. And that's all I have, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
All right, commissioners, questions for staff. Commissioner Amorosi.
Lee, on the, you put up a stat that there were 85 people opposed. Does that include the 18 that we got today?
That is a running tally, including, I forgot to mention that, I did share with you some comments that were received after the updated agenda attachments from Friday afternoon, this past Friday afternoon. So that running tally includes those comments you have in front of you. And then I also provided the applicant's commitment in meeting or complying with all the staff's recommended conditions of approval as well. So there's an email, a separate email in front of you that includes that commitment from the applicant.
Thank you.
Other questions? Vice Chair DiDomenico.
I saw somewhere in the packet there was a recommendation, I believe, from staff to eliminate a driveway on the McClintock frontage because of the shared driveway that runs between the other two commercial users. And applicant was not in support of making that change. What was the reason?
I'm not sure what the response was, but through the process, that comment was made by the Transportation Traffic Division, and that they did not follow through with that comment. As far as a response is concerned, I'm not clear on what that is, but just to give you an overview, there is cross access provided from the lot to the south and to the east. So the elimination of the driveways would still work for the site, given that cross access is provided and already existing. But that was a comment that was provided by traffic, and I don't have an answer as far as what the response was as far as disregarding that comment.
Lee, I have a question. It's not very often we see recommendation to deny. And one of the terms you laid out is that this project would not meet the goals of the General Plan 2040. Can you be more explicit about that? In what ways does this not fulfill 2040?
Yes, Chairman Lyon. In regards to the general plan land use element, the goals that the project is in conflict is land use goal 3, which is to seek balance and compatibility of new land use development with established residential neighborhoods. Community residents have voiced concern about the proposed use and how it does not fit within the variety type of retail and services that the surrounding neighborhood is seeking. The other land use goal that is in conflict with the project is land use goal 5, which is to provide land use and transportation integrated planning, design and development that reinforces and enhances the character of the entire community. The project does not conform with the planning tools used to develop geographically unique plans, such as the Corona South Tempe Character Area Plan. The other land use goal that's in conflict with this project is to promote neighborhood enhancements and livability. This project is not considered a revitalization from the previous development, given that it was a gas and service station. And lastly, the last land use goal that's been identified as being that the project is being in conflict with is ensuring that the public participation standards, including the ongoing communication and active involvement. But actually, I have to take a step back from that. that goal. The applicant did provide a voluntary neighborhood meeting that was not required. And although it was staff's recommendation, they did voluntarily hold this meeting to gather input from the surrounding neighborhood and try to mitigate any concerns that they feel that they can address throughout this project.
So I think that this will become a question. Bear with me if you will. I don't want this to just be me opining, but I'll just say that I don't think that I get it. There are a lot of people here that want to speak on this case, and I'm sure you'll tell me what I'm missing. But I'm not sure. I don't see what there is to oppose. This to me is an improvement on what was there previously, and it matches pretty well with a discount tire. What would staff's expectations be of what they would expect to see arise here instead?
Staff's expectation would be a project that fulfills what the neighborhood seeks in their community as far as what type of services they want provided on this corner, given that it's a prominent corner and identified as something that's called for in their character area plan principles, development principles.
So if we hear people say we demand a Sprouts tonight, we won't accept anything but a Sprouts?
Not Sprout, maybe it's Sprouts, maybe it's something. I mean, there's limitations on the site. There are obviously constraints with the size and the location. But what we're hearing from the neighborhood is they want something other than a vehicle-based service use.
Okay, fair enough. I'll let you off the hook. Thank you, Mr. Jimenez, unless there are other questions. Commissioner Summers?
Just one more. We heard earlier, thank you. We heard earlier that the applicant is complying with all of staff's recommendations and stipulations. But in the report, I see several parts where the statement is applicant did not accommodate this recommendation, various things. Just curious, did they overcome those, or was that in the past, or are those still sticking points?
So the comments that we provided during site plan review that were addressed or that were not addressed that we felt needed to be addressed were provided as conditions of approval or as recommended conditions of approval. And that it goes in regards to the materials used on the elevations, on the wainscot and the columns, as well as the screen walls for the parking and the service-based screenings. And also just the minor comments that we had just to comply or conform with the code in regards to landscape requirements for a parking facility.
So you're just in a nutshell, the stipulations that you're proposing overcome all of these, did not comply.
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. And now a question, Commission. I realize we did not ask any questions of our applicant. Is there anyone that wished to ask a question of our applicant? Because we skipped right past that. All right, we'll have an opportunity later, I think. All right. Thanks for bearing with us. All right, folks. So here's the main event. Again, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Please respect each other's time. Please do not speak over each other. We just don't like to do that here. You'll get your time. And when I ask you to wrap it up, please do so. So first I have here Salma O'Brien.
Hi, I am at 85284 resident. I live in Circle G Ranches, just down the street from the proposed Valvoline station. As you had mentioned at the beginning of this, before we started, what your mission statement is, it was about having looking at plans that are safe, attractive, that are don't decrease our home value. Well, I find that the Valvoline station definitely does all of those. I can go into that. I only have 3 minutes, so I have a lot of points. We see rural and McClintock has done a really great job, and Old Circle K has been turned into Tempe Public Market. That's what the character study says. That's what we want. And space, there's space there. There's enough space there to do that. We have 2 or 3 other oil stations right around there. So I don't know why we can't drive a mile to another one. Let's see. Scrap to the lot. You asked if I don't understand what's the opposition. So if somebody asks for a Sprouts and we can't give them a Sprouts, personally, I would leave it blank. I would leave it as it is than to put a Valvoline station there. It does not fit our neighborhood. It does not fit our community. It does not help our house values. So that's what I have.
Okay, thank you. You know, I kind of like that. Can we be satisfied that that was our one applause for the night? We don't typically applaud. It was very cute, though. Thank you. Okay, so let's do this. Sometimes we may want to ask a question, but to keep it rolling fast, I'm just going to assume we're not going to until someone speaks up and says we are. Okay? All right, so Dan O'Brien.
Appreciate you hearing us. I am in agreement with everything Salma said, but with a couple additional concerns. I know the point was brought up about access on McClintock. And for those of you that are in that area quite a bit, you understand how much crossing traffic is happening in that middle lane. And it just seems to be a real issue already. So I love that idea of closing off that access if possible. And then the other concern I have is really the commitments about landscaping and screening. It seems like a lot of time those things are talked about, and then when we see the actual building, it's not really there. There's not a number of trees required, a screening height required, a no overhead doors visible from the street. So that would be something that I would add to some comments, is that I'm just concerned about the property in general, because those never seem to come through the way they're supposed to. And I do agree that it'll damage property values in the area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. George Blay.
Chairman, may
I'm
I
sorry?
request that when the member of the public is speaking, if they can state their name also on the record?
Oh, sorry, did we not get your name there?
We got the first two from moving on, just so that they can state their name for the record. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, please state your name into the microphone. George Blay.
My name is George Blay, and I'm here to voice my opposition to the Valvoline station. We went and took the time to prepare a character statement for our neighborhood, and it seems like that's being ignored and not being provided to us. The other thing that I wanted to point out is this will be the fourth repair facility within a mile. We are saturated with repair facilities. We don't need another one. Thank you.
Okay. Jill Strandquist.
Hello, I'm Jill Strandquist. I am a South Tempe resident and neighborhood of Circle G. I wish to comment in opposition of the Valvoline proposed Valvoline business that we're talking about tonight. I live a mile away from this proposed location. I shop, I bike, I walk to all the local businesses in the area and support many of the businesses in the area. My vision for South Tempe and the Warner-McClintock area is a neighborhood that is self-contained, a self-contained neighborhood such as Arcadia. I would love to see very similar development as Tempe Market and Ghost Ranch that have gone in down the way, that have been very successful and very welcoming by many, many neighbors in the area. It is one thing to have a commercial fast food joint, chicken restaurant that's going to be going in across the intersection there, in the same intersection, but an oil and lube business just does not fit for me or for the South Tempe neighborhood. So in my opinion, I believe many neighbors will not support this Valvoline business because that is not a part of what our community envisions for that particular part of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Amanda Stewart. we have an Amanda Stewart? There we go.
Leg. Sorry, it's a short person's problem. I'm Amanda Stewart, and I'm the HOA president for Circle G Ranches, which we're about half a mile from that hard corner at Warner McClintock. And I've lived there about 15 years. I've seen the character of South Tempe sort of transform a bit. Our housing stock has gotten older, but the home values, the land values have significantly increased. The Warner corridor was always an executive housing corridor. And maybe at this point, I should say, I'm a little bit retired now, but I used to be in that development business. Did some retail development, some larger ones near Dana Point. I also did some smaller stuff. I used to do office and industrial site selection work around the country. So I do have a little bit of an idea of what industrial and office users want. And one of the biggest things they want is amenities, not lubes shops, not with our executive housing along Warner. They want food. And when I look at Arcadia, and I know Walt's been incredibly successful at building projects, building triple net projects on hard corners like this. But the reality is we should be Arcadia. Arcadia has done a tremendous job of providing infill projects that make their communities self-contained. And we need that. If you want to continue to attract, corporate places at ASU Research Park or Discovery Park, you need the food. Otherwise, we will continue to spend our sales tax dollars up north in downtown Scottsdale. I will continue to drive to Arcadia, or I will go south to Chandler. But I'm not spending it in South Tempe right now. I mean, I do a little bit, and I love, Tempe Public Market. I love the infill projects we've had. Heck, I like the Verizon store better than that old crappy 7-Eleven we used to have at the corner. But those are infill projects. They do work. You might not make as great a return as you do on a triple net, Valvoline right there. But the reality is that's what we need. To tell us that, hey, you always had a gas station there, that's not appropriate. You just can't tell us that, because we knew for at least the last 10 years, the operators of that gas station told us they were closing. I mean, those of us that use that, we knew it was going to be gone. So to tell us that that was our expectation, it wasn't, not when we did the plan. So basically, just to go through a little bit, I'd really like you to consider what you want us to be. Circle G just made a huge financial commitment in our neighborhood, and our housing stock, we're selling over $1 million homes. So I represent approximately $160 million in assets right there at our community. And we are executive housing stock. Is that the 3 minutes? Sorry. But please consider what you want executives to have in our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Smith. Yeah. We don't traditionally do overheads for comment. If you could just make a comment.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. I'll let you fact check me afterwards. I'll hand you my phone so the record will show that the chairman agrees. 86 responses for no. I'm one of those 86. I have a survey which I would like to share with you where we had 772 responses via an email survey powered through Google Forms, came from 11 neighborhoods. Of our responses, 1/4 are from the neighborhoods directly behind the Valvoline. The responses from the neighbors are 96.9% said no to Valvoline. So that's 96.9 of 772. So you could estimate that at about 600. Some of those are here today. And I think my previous neighbor brought up an interesting point. Earlier, Chairman, you asked, I don't get it. Like, what if not, there was a gas station there, but what do we want to have there? We've talked a little bit about Ghost Ranch. Earlier this week, Exhibit A, B, I don't know if anyone can see my phone here. The Food Network gave a shout out to South Tempe. Did you know this? Best restaurants in Phoenix, Ghost Ranch. Now, forgive me if I feel a little emotional when I say that. right? I mean, I feel a little emotional as a neighbor and a little vulnerable to come out and say how proud that makes me of my neighborhood. That what used to be an abandoned gas station, not even one that was in use, an abandoned Circle K, has become a cultural, it's hard to even put into words, but it's a crossroads where we see each other and we smile at each other and we wave to one another and we put the South Tempe stickers on our rear window of our cars because of our community pride. So when you say, what is it that we're looking for? We defined in the character areas, the whole process that we went through. We've defined it again with 600 responses here and 89 that Lee talked about. But if you hear the passion in our voices, we're not anti-business at all. We're absolutely very much pro-business. And we want to keep our tax dollars in South Tempe. What we have in North Tempe is a clear metropolis. It is a booming, beautiful downtown that we can all be proud of. What we have in South Tempe is becoming something that's new in America, a mid-urban community. It's not a suburb that we remember where it's just an extension. Can we pull up Valvoline slide 2? Map United States. Suburbs are known as being all the same. Suburbs are where we go to escape maybe the intensity of the city and to agree to a universal but bland experience of what it means to live in America. If we look at slide 2, thank you, final sentence. Slide 2, this is the exact reason why we don't want Valvoline, because that's not South Tempe. That's a corporate look at how to build a profitable business on all those dots, and we just don't want to be one of those dots. Thank you.
I take your word for it. For what it's worth, I love Ghost Ranch.
Chairman, could you state your name just for, Matt Smith. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll say again, I enjoy the applause, but I don't think we can do it. Supposing there's somebody here that is a little timid and has a very good point that is opposed, I would feel, if I was that person, maybe I won't say my point anymore. Okay, so you did speak very well, and in my heart, I applaud your speaking. But let's keep our applause to ourselves and just weigh those ideas mentally. Okay, guys. All right. So David R. I'm not sure what the last name is. Ends with ERT. Is it Robert or Ratchert? David R. Okay, let's try that one again later. Kent. Somebody wrote Valvoline-Kent. Okay, well, thanks for filling that out. I see. Okay. All right. Well, you guys will have a chance to respond shortly.
David Reichert is part of the applicant's process.
David Reichert, I apologize. All right. Arthur Lebowitz. I think I'm pronouncing that wrong. Can you tell me how to?
This time, and I'll defer since I've already spoken once.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Aaron O'Grady.
Excuse me. Since you asked. I'm not shy. Arthur Lebowitz, 85284. I live within less than a quarter of a mile. Thank you for not putting a vape store there. I also want to say that we appreciate the significant responsibility you have in deciding the future of our neighborhood. We have, through many avenues, expressed how we feel our neighborhood needs to evolve. The decision ultimately is yours about our neighborhood, and we hope that you'll respect the neighborhood that we want to evolve and live in, not the corporate neighborhood that we want to evolve away from. Ghost restaurants, while that may or may not be what goes in there, the flavor, excuse the pun, is what we're after, and we hope you understand. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Aaron O'Grady.
Hello, I'm Erin O'Grady. I'm a resident of Circle G Ranches. I'm a third generation lifelong resident of the city of Tempe. My family has invested much in the city of Tempe, and I'm opposed to the Valvoline establishment. I have concerns over it. I think when you, as a commission, are considering developments that are going to be put into the city, you need to consider if they're going to enhance or detract from the intersection. And I think that you've heard a general consensus that this detracts from the intersection. I don't appreciate the condescending tone of big corporations telling us that we only want a Sprouts, because that doesn't reflect who we are. We are open to many possibilities, and if you drive down the streets of Arcadia, you can look at some of those possibilities. We want what is good for our neighborhoods, and we have seen neighbors leave to go to South Scottsdale because they like the developments, they like the retail areas that are in that. So we want to stay in Tempe, so please respect our wishes and consider what we desire. Also, I feel like if the development corporation doesn't go with the 93% opposition rate, we will appeal to the city council and tell them that we're feeling like our wishes are not being respected by the commission and that the condescending attitude just isn't appreciated. Also, I would like to say that the intersection of McClintock and Warner seems to be playing second fiddle to Rule and Warner right now. And I feel like the Tempe Public Market and that kind of feel that's going on at Rule and Warner, we're getting the fast food chicken and the Valvoline with the big steak coming up. It looks like it belongs, you know, and I'm not meaning to detract from anywhere else, but an inner city development where that does not reflect the values of our neighborhood. We don't want to see more people leaving because we're filling our places with oil and gas establishment. Now, I understand that you think that matches, so you're not sure why it can't go in because we used to have an oil establishment, and if it matches, it's not a good fit. For example, one of Valvoline's services is to rotate tires. Well, Discount Tire does that for free. So why put an establishment that does that for a charge right in front of an establishment that does that for free? Also, AutoZone will put your wipers in for free. They're at Elliott and McClintock. So why do we need Valvoline to charge us for that 1 mile away? Also, AutoZone will do a battery service. That's another thing Valvoline is going to charge us for. Why would we go there? We are longtime Tempe residents. We know that we can get these services for free. So then Valvoline's sitting there charging everyone for this. It does not make sense. If we want to compete as a city with South Scottsdale, we need to think about how that looks and help our community to look that way, not support gas and oil establishments with giant poles. It's just not attractive. I also think that looking forward into the future, when we're wondering what we should approve, we need to look for things that promote retail and other eateries that would make people feel at home and want to walk around our community, not gas and oil. And I understand he's local, but he doesn't live by that intersection like we do, and we are more highly invested in that area than he is. So please respect your citizens that live in the surrounding intersection, not the big corporation who's telling us what we need. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a card here from Rosemary Horvath, and it looks like you'd like to have your comment read into the record, if I understand right. Let's see. Do not allow Valvoline to be erected on Warner and McClintock. Keep South Tempe eclectic and open to small development. Here's Cindy Fernandez. Don't allow such an eyesore in South Tempe. Go with something new and a type of small business, not large private development. Kathy Beebe or Beebe, I'm not sure. No oil mega shop at McClintock and Warner. There's already a Valvoline off of Elliott Road. How many oil change businesses are needed? I thought the planning included locally owned restaurants and community hubs, I think is what that says. And finally, John McRae, I would like to voice my pushback on the Valvoline oil change facility on McClintock and Warner. Noted. All right, is there anyone else that wishes to make comment? If so, okay. So here's what I'd like to do. I'll ask the first of you to come up and then do a card afterwards. And if anyone else could find a card, fill it out, make sure we get it to staff. We have to keep track of who spoke. I saw this hand first. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you the one that we went past? Let's see. You are not these people. I'm sorry, what is your name, ma'am? Judy Tapscott. There it is. Got lost. Would you please come up, Miss Tapscott?
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Judy Tapscott. I'm Chair of the Altamira Neighborhood Association. We're located just south of this proposed Valvoline development. We have a very active and engaged community in Altamira, around 400 households. We have a history of successfully obtaining neighborhood improvement grants, including landscape along the right-of-ways for Warner and McClintock, improving that look and feel, new signage for our neighborhood, planting over 100 trees in our area, and partnering with our next door neighborhoods, Altamirada, Corona del Sol, in efforts to improve our general area. Ours and the surrounding neighborhoods are engaged and intent on preserving and improving the areas that we live in. As you know, this Corona South Tempe was the first character area to develop and adopt a plan with very specific recommendations in 2014. The process lasted over an 18-month period. I attended every meeting. It was well attended by neighbors in South Tempe. As we as stakeholders identified priorities around connectivity, environment, development, community, and culture. Priorities were identified and the plan was adopted as a view towards what the community wanted. You now know, after receiving literally hundreds of signatures, council communicators, letters, and phone calls, what the majority of neighbors see as a plan to place a business inconsistent with the character area plan that we helped create. Staff recommends denial of this project. Overwhelmingly, the neighbors agree. Please deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes, could you fill out a card after you've finished, and then I've got another one coming after that. Please state your name also.
Yes, I'm Jan Septon. I live in Warner Estates. I've been there about 30 years, and the first time our neighborhood heard about this Valvoline project was Christmas. And so would like to say that something's wrong with the process when something this major gets so far along before anyone has any input. Thanks.
All right. Please don't neglect that card. Russell Courtney.
My name is Russ Courtney. I live in Raintree Estates, 85284. I'd just like to see the commission take into account what the city has worked for. We spent a good amount of time with the 2040 plan. The neighborhood has invested a good amount of time in the 2040 plan as well. I'd like to see you support that. And we didn't ask to have something, a development such as this. We want to see things that are more walkable, more trees for us. We want to see restaurants, that type of retail. Thank you.
Okay. Greg Massard or Massard?
Hello, Greg Massoud, Circle G. We chose to move from Ocotillo to South Tempe because it is eclectic. That's sort of a confusing word to use. It's eclectic in a very positive way. I like that my kids can ride their bikes over to Mascadores. It's not all about Ghost Ranch. That's a fantastic place also. I don't see them riding their bikes to a Valvoline store. That is why we moved there. We wanted to get away from the traditional suburbs that we lived in South Chandler. If it wasn't so far from work and our family who lives in Chandler, Arcadia would have been a nice destination. This was something very similar to that. And I would like to see that enhanced rather than detracted from the neighborhood with such an establishment as a Valvoline. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so if I missed anyone or if there's anyone left that wishes to speak, please make it known. Okay. And then a card afterwards, if you would, sir.
So I was just listening to hear where I could fill in the blanks, basically. So I'm a new resident. There's a lot of people who've been here a long time, and I've been here about 6 years. So I've seen those property values go up in South Tempe. Sorry, my name's Tom Barclay. I live in a state, La Colina, so just north of where this is going to go in. And I guess one thing that hasn't been said is we just put a fire station in that took about a third of my park up. And I go to the shopping center all the time. And in the past 6 years, we talked about saturation with oil change places. Well, saturation in general in this block is just probably quadrupled. You put in, or you allowed, I think, a gym that went in right in that same corner that probably doubled the amount of traffic in that area. So to say, well, this Valine is going to add more traffic, well, we did. We added more traffic. We added a fire station. We took away green space all in that same area, and now we're going to add this. So this is a big change for our block. A suggestion that's not a Sprouts could be a green space to replace the green space that was taken away, because it is a small lot and it's in a strange location that won't work for a lot of different businesses. But yeah, something that's walkable, bikeable, green is my suggestion. Thank you. I'll fill out the card.
Okay, thank you. All right, any more? Everyone's had a chance. All right, so I will close the public comments section. And now we'll invite our applicant to come up and respond to the many things that you've heard.
And Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name's David Rickard, and I have had over 30 some years of experience administering the things that you're actually being asked tonight to render a decision on. A use permit by definition is a presumed use in that district, subject to some criteria to make sure, because when that district was created, didn't know quite if that use should be there. So they put the use permit provision on it. By virtue of that, you have a listing of things in your staff report, and for the record, I want to put these on the record. The use will not cause an adverse impact on the adjacent property or properties in the area. You have to demonstrate what those impacts are if in fact you're going to use that as criteria. The second thing is adverse impacts include examples of significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic, and it says into the adjacent residential areas. People tonight have said they're not going to be walking there. They're not going to be people going back and forth. But I can tell you the demographics that are in that neighborhood or neighborhoods around here are exactly why Valvoline wants to be here. The other thing that is required is emissions or dust, gas, noise, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare. Now, if in fact any of those exist, they can't go beyond the ambient level. Okay, we've all been to the discount tire. As much as they've improved their activities, there's still quite a bit of noise that comes over there. This use won't compete with that. Contribute in a measurable way the deterioration of the neighborhood or area, or contribute to the lowering of property values. People have agreed tonight they think this will lower their property values, but I can guarantee you if you study it, by demoing the site, improve the value of that piece of property, the subject site, and the areas around it with all the things that staff had put together, actually is providing a landscaped area far greater than you'll see in most situations like this. One of the things I think we're in a little bit in the wrong venue, and the chairman was heading down this, general plan and area plans without tools within those plans, hopefully someday will get improved, but you have given yourself no tools to make that happen. And to do those tools or have those tools available, because believe me, I was the planning director for the city of Phoenix. I sat with people like you every night trying to figure out, how can we change our neighborhood? How can we make it better? The use permit procedure is the least of the tools that you can use. And it is my opinion, and always has been my opinion, working for Phoenix or Scottsdale and now as a private consultant, that you're obligated as a city to recommend approval of a use permit if the criterion are met. So if there's no proof shown that there's a lower property values, there's any of these glaring problems come up, staff covered all of that in their stipulations. So I think the staff report was just about there, and I give credit to staff listening to their people that they work with. But you got to understand, you got a legal responsibility to the property rights of this property. You need that person, you need staff, you need mayor and council to change things to make it happen for you. And I hope it does, because I loved working in Arcadia. But you know, there's no commercial zoning in Arcadia itself. Nobody generally probably knows that. It's all residential. So with that, I'd like to conclude, and there were more opposition numbers given. We haven't been given all that information. So in summary, I just think that you have, and you were going down that road, that the area plan and the general plan show this is commercial. It's been that way. It's been used as a use permit previously. You're going to something less intense, more up to date, and far better landscaped than any of them I've seen in the recent past. We really would appreciate your approval this evening and move forward. And we always are open to working with the neighborhood to make sure that this becomes something that hopefully they actually come and participate in the services that are there. And if you have any questions, I can try to answer them or let somebody else on the marketing of this site.
All right, Commission, questions for our applicant? Seeing none, we will thank you. All right. You have an additional remark, you, Mr. Wick? Are you part of the application team?
Yes.
Okay. He's our marketing guy.
All right.
Some of the uses that wanted to go here, I'll just say it on the record, you wouldn't want them. And there's no use permits required for them. So by virtue of that, this is still something better than what we may have found for the site.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I shot my big fat mouth off. Oh, I thought you were not going to come to
I'm with the
stand.
applicant, if that's okay, if I can speak.
All right.
It might be helpful. So
Well, sir.
my name is Ken Gatt, and I work with the Walton Diversified, and I'm in the marketing and leasing side of things. So I was a person responsible for talking to as many people as I could to try and get them to come to this corner. And I want to thank the commissioners for letting me speak. So I marketed the project for about 10 or 11 months. And before securing Valvoline, we reached out to dozens and dozens of restaurants and retailers directly, either by phone or actually face-to-face meetings, as well as email blasts to hundreds and hundreds of retailers and restaurants and their brokerage representatives. Regarding restaurants, some of the highlighted ones we reached out to was like Bobby Q Barbecue. We reached out to Uptown Projects of Postino and Federal Pizza and the Windsor. We reached out to the Fox Restaurant Group for Flower Child, North, and Blanco. Oso Brewery, Humble Pie, Oregano's, Babo's Italian, Barrio Queen, Pomo Pizzeria, Sushi Brokers, Los Dos Molinos, the VIG and their related entities. We reached out to, we exhausted a lot of different avenues. Almost all of them felt the area was not right for them, and for some, they like the area, however, do not want to be at our intersection and would rather be 1 mile to the west where Ghost Ranch is. There was a bit more of an eclectic boutique vibe with restaurants, et cetera, and they don't feel being at Warner McClintock, where there are so many discount retailers in place, kind of fits their motif. Also, being next to a discount tire doesn't really help create that much of an ambiance for a cool type of restaurant. You know, if you've ever stood outside a Discount Tire without earplugs, you can hear those air horns or the air guns all the time. Also, in addition, there are so many of the discount retailers across the street. You know, you have two different you have a used sporting goods store, you have a used kids clothing store, Harbor Freights is there. There's also Verizon on one corner, Dunkin' Donuts, and Raising Cane's. So, you know, with that, I also too am a little perplexed. I thought bringing Valvoline, which is a flagship in their industry, to the corner was a giant improvement over what was there before. I also read all of those letters, and one of the big topics was increased traffic. And I challenge anybody to try and find a retailer or a service type of user that brings in fewer cars per week than Valvoline does. And also, lastly, we did have the other backup tenant that we did have to this was a car wash. They were willing to pay substantially more in rent for the property, and we just didn't feel that was right. We were just really happy that we had Valvoline. Thanks.
Okay. Did I miss anything this time? All right. So, Commission, I was about to say that I kind of got the ball rolling a little bit and painted a target on myself, which I'm fine with doing. I will say that I largely still feel the same way, but I think that I think that the issue is a little more complex than we've talked about. I would love to see all kinds of great, cool restaurants show up, but I'm not sure that they're coming. If we were to deny this application, well, you might get something which is not as good as what we've seen tonight, or that site might sit vacant for quite a while. I see faces saying that's fine. But I'm not convinced that it is fine. I think that part of our job is to make sure that land gets put to its highest, best, reasonable use. And while I might wish for something to appear, I don't know that it will because I want it to. So I guess I'll say, since I started things, I feel like I should speak up first. I'm still not entirely convinced. However, staff has recommended denial, and I tend to trust them. And we've heard an enormous number of people that have said they don't want this. And that's enough for me to say, all right, I don't need to support this project if staff and the community don't support it. But I do so stating that I'm not certain that you're going to get something better. You might get something worse. And I'm sort of stepping outside of my comfort zone to trust everyone else's opinion on this matter. So having said that, what are your thoughts and feelings, commissioners? Commissioner Amorosi.
I'll start it off. I thought it was funny tonight that we had a AAA auto repair place, and now we have this Valvoline on the same agenda, and there was absolutely no opposition to a AAA auto repair place, and yet you have tons of opposition to the Valvoline, both quality companies, but I think it has to do with the neighborhood. You know, one neighborhood didn't have a problem with it. This neighborhood does. And the applicant even mentioned something about there's not enough tools. And he's right. Neighborhoods don't have enough tools. I come from an area where I've been up against even this commission a couple times saying we would rather see an empty lot than something bad going in, because once it goes in, you're stuck with it. So you have the character area plan that neighbors worked on for over a year, and this is a tool. And if this is the only tool they have to work with, and you see so much opposition to it, and then on top of that, staff also says to deny it, I am firmly in the neighborhood's camp here, and I would deny the Valvoline, even though they're a great company, because of the location and the saturation of already having 3 other oil change places in the area. it doesn't fit into their neighborhood plan.
Other comments? Commissioner Johnson.
I'll just quickly follow that up. I appreciate your comments, Chair Lyon and Commissioner Moreau. The only thing that I'll add is that typically when we have significant email opposition to a project, it will be a form letter that people personalize in minimal ways. Most of these emails were uniquely written and in their own voice, and so I think that lends a little bit more authenticity to it, and in my book gives it a little more authority. So I will not be voting in favor of this project tonight.
Commissioner Summers.
Couldn't have said it better. Thank you. I've lived in Tempe for about 30 years, spent a decade in Corona Ranch, put my kids through Wagoner, KMS, and Corona del Sol. So I know the neighborhood really well. When my daughter was thinking about buying a car, she actually got it checked out at the former establishment that was on this site. So I know this really well. It's been there for a long time. I appreciate what you're saying because in a former career, I dealt with a lot of downtown development, neighborhood development, and we would get, some people know exactly what I'm talking about, we would get form letters, and we would get online campaigns where people sign up with fake names 10 times. That's not what we have here, not at all. So I'm happy to not support Valvoline, which I would, if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I don't think I'd be in the same position. But thank you for writing the letters and taking the time to show up tonight.
Other comments?
I won't duplicate what's been said already. Mr. Reichert, as part of the applicant's presentation, made a point about what's in our toolbox as a commission. What do we work with? He also correctly pointed out that staff did a pretty good job crafting their report and was more or less in line with what they said. Well, the crux of what they said was they recommended denial, and they recommended denial because it does not conform with the 2040 plan, of which we as commissioners are supposed to have an eye towards. We are also supposed to pay attention to these character area studies and plans that have been put together in several of our neighborhoods. Not all, but many neighborhoods have them, and we're supposed to read them and use them as a tool to help guide us. This would be a different discussion, I think, here at our commission if this was an adaptive reuse question. If that existing building was still there and they were following our adaptive reuse plan or program here in the city to turn that existing Shell station into the use that they're proposing now, but they didn't. It's a dirt lot, and when that dirt lot appeared, its prior use went away. It's no longer a gas station that's becoming an oil change station. It's a vacant lot that's looking to become a Valvoline. And although I have no problem with the Valvoline as a use, and I probably frequent them as a customer or one of their competitors, I can't support it because of what's in the staff report. And I also, this is going to be appealed. No matter which way this commission votes, the applicant is going to take this to the next level, and that's why our process is designed this way. And if it's voted against the neighborhood wishes, the neighbors are going to, and the city council will ultimately hear this case again. I would strongly recommend in that iteration that you get rid of the other driveway and use the one that's there, because that's a dangerous situation at that shopping center with two side-by-side driveways. We don't have a way for two people to decide other than who's got the bigger truck. When you're next door, 5 feet apart from another driveway, the guy wants to go left and this one wants to go right. It's ugly. So that's my 2 cents.
Other comments or motions? If we're not going to comment, let's make a motion.
Well, as we've done before, we need to have an affirmative motion on the record one way or the other. So I will make the motion for approval of the use permit, PL 190090, with the conditions of approval as presented in the staff report.
Do I hear a second? You don't have to vote for it if you second it.
Or it can fail for lack of a second.
Second.
All right. It could have failed. All right, motion to approve from Vice Chair DiDomenico, seconded from Commissioner Sumners. All those in favor by show of hands, please. Opposed? Okay, the motion fails 7-0. Do I hear a different motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Sumners.
Motion to deny PL 190090, consistent with the staff recommendation.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, motion to deny the application from Commissioner Sumners, seconded by Commissioner Johnson. All those in favor by show of hands. Motion passes 7-0. All right, thank you, folks. I appreciate you putting that forward as an approval first. I think that's appropriate. All right, folks, we've got a little more business. If you could keep the rumble down, please, I'd appreciate that. If we could move on to 6th and College, please.
Calls and emails, and it's like, oh shit. Okay.
85 plus whatever.
And they will.
You're there for that, yeah. You know, it used to be a pizza place. I can walk.
Ms. Laws.
So, good evening. For your record, my name is Angela Laws, law firm of Gamage and Burnham. I am here today to talk about the hotel at 6th and College. I have a presentation. Thanks, Steve. Anyway, as you guys may remember, this is the site that's right next to our building, actually, at 6th and College. We had come here about a year ago, and we had the hotel and the residential condos on top. If you may remember that, I don't know how many of you were still on the commission. But through a series of issues, some related to kind of constructability, it's a very small site, as many of you know, and it was turning into kind of an issue with both kind of trying to manage the condos and the hotel, so that it's coming back as just a hotel. So it's a pretty similar project in terms of a hotel. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. Had a long night. I know Charles is next. So I want to give a brief presentation. I can talk to you a little bit about the parking. I know that I think the chair had a question about the parking. Did you, or somebody did? Want to just ask a question about the parking, or Blake is happy to ask a question about the parking. I don't have my presentation. Anyway. So the hotel ownership is now a combination of Oakland, who's the investment, and then Tempe Development, who is a hotel firm out of Salt Lake, and they develop a lot of hotels. It's still going to be a high-end boutique hotel as it was earlier presented. So it's a very similar hotel, similar, obviously, the location. I think we're all familiar with it. I won't belabor it. Here it is on March 8th, 2018. The City Council approved the PAD and DPR for a 22-story building with the hotel, 186 guest rooms, and 60 residences. So today, won't go through it, but we're actually asking for recommendation for the approval of the PAD, approval of the DPR, and then a use permit to allow the kind of the tandem vertically stacked parking in the city center district. So the hotel, very similar. We have 180 guest rooms. We've actually increased the amount of conference center. We have 75 square feet of conference space, fitness center, kind of a larger roof deck, indoor bar, and then we have kind of bicycle spaces and then 60 parking spaces. So just to talk about it, we're going from 270 to 170. So basically reducing it by 100, eliminating 60 residential units. You can kind of go through it, reducing a little bit of the guest rooms, increasing conference space, street level lobby decrease a little bit, but you'll see it looks very similar. Landscape coverage is very similar. And then we meet the parking requirement and in terms of vehicles and bikes. So I'm going to show you some pictures. So one thing that was really important, and certainly important to me because I spent a lot of time on the street, is we kind of activate 6th Street, and you can kind of see the same kind of activations. We can show you some pictures in terms of here. Kind of, we were trying to plan kind of the outdoor patio that kind of matches what's happening at Postino and Snooze. We've always been trying to activate that corner on 6th and College. Here you can see the wrap where we have the parking garage on 6th Street. 6th Street is bigger. The hotel lobby coming off College with a little bit of a rideshare drop off. And then trying to actually, start to activate what's happening along 6th Street as you go north. So this is to give you a very brief, I won't belabor it, but the very brief street level floor plan, as we talked about, kind of the hotel lobby, drop off along College, cafe, and then refuse and then parking along 6th Street. And again, here's kind of some floor plans that I'm going through fairly quickly. Just in terms of, here's kind of our roof deck plan. One thing we have, I think you saw, we're still working with the staff in terms of a little bit of how the roof deck lays out. So we appreciate you accepting that condition as we kind of talk through this, how we want to have negative edge to the roof deck. Staff would like some landscape planters in front of the roof deck. So we're just working through some landscape planting exercise. So that's kind of it. I'm happy to talk more about it. We're super excited. I think, we're all excited to get this hotel started. Happy to answer any questions.
Comments, questions?
Timing,
In terms of when we're going to start construction? Or,
demolition, construction.
here, Blake will talk. Blake is from Oakland.
Questions if I can.
Name it.
Yeah, good evening, commissioners. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I'm Blake Bunker. I'm the managing director with Oakland Capital, and I represent the ownership group. And we are an investor in the project, but we do also have some vertical development and construction capabilities. So timing is such that when we get city council approval, we'll move right into construction documents and plan on pulling a building permit as soon as possible and starting vertical development. So we're guessing that is somewhere around the end of first quarter 2020.
Other comments? Commissioner Schwartz.
So in the previously approved project, there was a pretty large art element on the east facade. What are your ideas about incorporating the public art component in this design?
So we are, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Schwartz, we're still working through the public art element. Blake and I have talked a little bit about doing, I don't know if Commissioner Moreau remembers this, doing an element, can't see here, but it was on the west side of the wall, kind of the mural as it kind of faces as you're coming east. We're still working through that. The other art element, as you may remember, also hid more of the parking garage. So we brought the building closer to the street. So in terms of where we're going to put, we're still working through the kind of art plan, but we have thought a little bit about a mural on the west side. We'll see, as it faces University Towers, because you have that area, or, we'll work through the art.
And then in some of the renderings, I see gate access on the garage, and previously you had a speed ramp, I think, in this project. Can you talk about the access right along 6th Street?
Yeah, you bet. So the previous project had a speed ramp up to 6 levels of parking that was open air. And then that screen, which was public art, was kind of a skin to help cover the facade. Our parking exists on the 2nd floor and it's fully enclosed. So it's not, it's not visible to the public. We went through many different parking iterations to try to find an optimal solution for this site because it is so small. And the ramping just took up way too much of the project, and we didn't want to sacrifice that much on the ground floor. And so we explored a whole lot of options, and what we came up with is this mechanical parking solution, which is really, you drive in there on the south side, and there are 2 parking lifts that take you up to the 2nd floor, and 30 spaces, and each of those spaces have a stacker in them, so you can park 2 cars in them. So it is a mechanical parking solution, which will be valet only. So people will have to valet their car, and it will be professionally managed by a parking company who is whose expertise is to manage these types of solutions.
So I'd like to dovetail on that, if I may. So am I correct that it is 100% valet? You cannot park your own car?
Correct. Other than the existing spaces that are on grade, metered spaces on the site.
Other questions or, well, let's do questions. No? No questions? You want to make a comment? Commissioner Brown.
So City of Tempe has a new zoning code coming up downtown. Maybe you've heard of that too?
Didn't hear that.
So you're ahead of that, and I don't think everything applies here, but are there any aspects to this that would in fact have been applicable? I suspect you've already identified that you're lower than what was previously approved, which is a good variety. Not everything has to be 200 feet. Are there any other aspects of this?
In terms of what the urban core
Yes.
requires, I mean, it's hard to say since it's a little bit.
Are you,
maybe
for
we
example,
could-
are you having, is Open going to be training apprentices and offering workforce development? Workforce development?
I think the apprenticeship language does not apply to the urban core, but we can certainly, the conversation is like, I think it, in terms of the urban core, there are certain aspects of it in terms of, I think about the mechanical parking, the height. I mean, there's some of they talk a lot, the current draft, as you know, talks a lot about kind of the pedestrian space and, that kind of landscaping, kind of openness in this corner along 6th and, oops, sorry.
Any water harvesting or gray water recycling?
Like what, gray water recycling?
I'm not aware of any gray water recycling, but I'm not the expert on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're mainly the kind of the pedestrian landscape and how the doors are open in terms of the patio experience. I think that's kind of what meets the urban core master plan. I don't know that some of those sustainability aspects I think you're talking about, as I understand it, and Obi or Saparna can correct me, are part of a kind of a density bonus conversation that we wouldn't, if we were trying to go taller as the previous plan, we'd probably have to do that density bonus. I think this site now at this current height is under this site was originally designated as 200 feet. So we're under that 200 feet. But as I understand, Saparna can correct me, Ryan can correct me, but that's how I understand how the bonus system works. That if we wanted to go back up to 270, then we would have the conversation.
Will the hotel rooms have operable balconies or windows that open fully?
No balconies, no operable windows.
Sealed. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Kingsby.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Obi Kingsby, Planner 2 with the City of Tempe. The applicant is requesting an amended planned area development overlay to establish development standards and a use permit standard to allow tandem parking, and a development plan review for a new 12-story hotel containing 180 keys and commercial uses at the ground floor. It's located on the northwest corner of College Avenue and 6th Street. The property is zoned CC and is part of existing PAD, as applicant explained, and is within the TOD station area. A neighborhood meeting was required for this project. 2 members of the public actually showed up to that meeting. I did not receive any public input prior to the completion of the report or today. Staff is recommending approval of this project subject to the conditions of approval. On the screen here, you see a few unique conditions. One of them for the use permit is one that was brought up in regards to the parking garage, and that it will be valet service and cannot be self-park. Number 17 there is we would like them to work with us a little further on some of the ground level facades of the project, and they're minimal to that. And then condition number 12 of the development plan review conditions, we would like it to be read, this condition to be read to the record in regards to the amenity deck and the patios up there and providing railing and sufficient buffering with either landscape or alternative options from a design standpoint. So I can answer any questions you may have in regards to the project.
Okay. Questions for staff?
Yeah.
Commissioner Sanders.
Just a quick one. So typical is 42 inches. You're recommending 48 for those railings. Is that what?
The typical, I believe, not positive is 42. We used to have on that 6 feet, but right now we're at 4 feet with code. That's what we're allowed to go to, building code at this moment.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there's any way around that wall. I mean, I'm a little out of my depth here. Which code is it that we have to satisfy that we have to have a wall there?
That you have to have a what?
It's, which one?
Okay.
No,
No,
go ahead.
you say you want as far as the height of the wall?
Well, I'm just wondering, is it possible to have no wall at all?
No, I believe you have to have a barrier. Sorts. I'm not positive exactly what that height is, that minimal height. I believe you do have to have a barrier.
So Chairman, we used to do it by condition for a lot of the projects where that barrier of some kind of a thing so that people can throw or jump off of a high-rise building for amenity deck areas. Used to be, we would, the condition of approval used to be 6 foot with 4 foot 2 or what. So the new fire code, as the new IBC 2018 that was adopted, has some restrictions with the fire code. So we amended it to 4, which is what complies with the fire code for safety purposes.
Including at-grade patios? Am I talking about the same thing?
It's the rooftop. It's the
I'm
rooftop
sorry.
amenity.
I read this wrong. I thought we were talking about seating at grade.
Sorry, no, this is at grade on the.
Didn't want to bury it.
It's been a long night. Yes. Take that how you will. All right, I'm sorry. I'm up to speed now. All right, thanks for putting up with me. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Kingsby. All right, so now we come to public comment time. Does anyone wish to speak on this case? I don't believe I have any cards. Going once, going twice. We'll close the public comment section. Thank you. All right. Commission? You want to speak your mind? I'm looking at you, Commissioner Summers. Oh, Commissioner Amorosi, please.
Well, thank you, Chairman Lyon. I just want to say I like the design of the building. I'm a little disappointed that the living units went away, but I'm happy to support this hotel at this site. I think it'll be a nice use.
Commissioner Summers.
Thank you. So I walked past this site on the way back from the ASU game last week, on the weekend, and that sidewalk is a mess. And the site, while it has some interesting uses on it, is cobbled together over time and cleaned up, and with something like this would be fantastic. And for me, there's a rendering that shows people walking along the street, attachment 47. And this is the most important thing for a project like this, is what's the street and the pedestrian experience like, and you're using a nice wide sidewalk. You've got the right landscaping, the right amount of landscaping, you've got an overhang. And bigger picture of the building is smaller, less high, and has more retail space and a conference center. So I don't know what's not to like here. I'm happy to support.
Well, I certainly like it better than last time we saw it. I love the parking. I did not like the 6 floors of corkscrew. I think this is a big improvement, and I'm happy to support this project too. More comments or motions?
I have a request. Is this a packaged parking solution? The stacked parking? Is there a manufacturer? Is there?
Yeah, there's certainly a manufacturer, but it's customized to the project. So the stackers themselves are pretty standard, and so are the lifts, and it's your typical kind of hydraulic lifts that are used in many applications.
I'd love to have, if there's like an example, a YouTube example or something that maybe Ms. Vaz could send to me after the fact. I've seen them in use in places and had bad experiences. Stuff comes out of the bottom of cars that, isn't attractive sometimes. Made a mess of a rental car once in Chicago.
Yeah,
so I'm sure
we'll
they're
do what
much
we can to
better
avoid
now.
that.
I don't know. I'm just interested in.
Yeah, we'd love to send you some information on it. We do have some specifications and some details, and we'll make sure to get.
Other than not parking there, I'm in favor of the project.
All right, how about a motion? Commissioner Johnson.
I move for the approval of PL 190070.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion to approve from Commissioner Johnson, seconded from Commissioner Amorosi. All those in favor by show of hands, please. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, so on to our final piece.
Did we need to, in the motion, Suparna, did we need to make specific reference to the modified condition?
Yeah, please.
All right. All right, good catch.
You could, yeah, amend.
You were almost home free.
I'll amend the motion for approval of PL 190070 to include the modified condition of approval number 12 provided by staff.
Second.
All right, new motion this time is, well, okay, amended motion to include condition number 12 as written by staff, seconded by Commissioner Amorosi. All those in favor by show of hands, please. 7-0 once again. Thank you. Good catch, Vice Chair. All right, so Mr. Hulemantel.
Thank you. I know it's been a long evening, a very long presentation, but I will shorten it given the time. While this is coming up, I'll note that we have been able to come to full agreement with staff on the conditions of approval. We had a neighborhood meeting. The only folks that showed up were in support of the project. We've reached out to many of our neighbors, again, always finding support. So we're excited to be before you. I'm still sort of stalling while the presentation comes up. And I'll, as a result of that, I'll sort of reduce my presentation. I'll skip through some of the slides in light of the hour, but always happy to go more in depth as I'm answering questions. I think anyone who's been in Tempe for any length of time knows this site pretty well. It's Broadway at Roosevelt, probably most well known as its relationship to Arby's, which has been redone. I myself have lived in this area for over 25 years, and it's always been an unfortunate path of getting into or out of Tempe. In the 25 years I've been here, Arby's has been redone, Burger King is redone, Circle K and Popeyes has opened, McDonald's has been redone, and there's now Jack in the Box. The city has taken great effort over the last year or so to create the Makers District, to try to reinvent what happens along Broadway Road. At the same time, the City Council has invested its future and money into changing what happens on Broadway through road improvement projects, particularly the capital improvement project, which is, I think, 5 years out now, but will help redefine what Broadway becomes. And we think we have an opportunity to become a big part of that. The site currently is a Wells Fargo building. This is a little bit unusual. Evergreen Development owns this site and has for quite some time. Often when you see cases before you, the person is considering buying the property. That isn't the case here. Evergreen purchased this a few years ago. Wells Fargo, still has a lease on the site, and that ends later this year. Something different will happen at that point in time. It's worth noting that although they have a lease and continue to pay on it, they have not been occupying the building for some time. It doesn't meet the standards that they see as appropriate, and so they've moved into another location. That makes its reuse sort of difficult. And I think as we talk through the case, this is an industrial district that we're talking about. This, however, is not an industrial site or an industrial building, although it's zoned GID. The site has been around for a really long time and lacks really any kind of architectural interest, in my opinion. It also lacks some of the landscaping that you might hope to see along Broadway Road, but we have a solution for both of those pieces. Interestingly, the neighborhood doesn't currently offer much in the way of architectural inspiration. Again, we know that this is envisioned as a very different district, and let me talk about that for just a second. One of the things that we think we offer is a different kind of housing. We're not downtown, although the units will be the same quality. They won't have to deal with things like the parking solution that Mr. DiDomenico that you just spoke of that you find in an urban area. If you're in the downtown, you find lots of amenities. You find the lake and you find the Whole Foods, and you also find the drawback of more expensive space by having taller buildings and usually very expensive parking solutions. Evergreen has owned this site for a long time, and one of the things we know is the city has been talking for some time about creating a workforce housing component. Because of the way that we own the land, because we're going to continue to own the land, because it's in an opportunity zone, and because we don't have the parking solution problems that other sites have, we think it gives us an opportunity to bring a product at a very different price point, but yet the same quality. Recognizing it doesn't have the natural amenities. We're not close to the light rail. We're not close to the streetcar. We're not close to the lake. So the site does have some drawbacks. And as I mentioned, it also has some drawbacks in terms of, we'll be one of the first, in fact, probably the first to move into the Makers District and to really reinvest in doing something very different. With that comes additional risk. Properties tend to be like children. You love them all. And while we recognize there are some challenges with this site, we love the site and see great opportunity in it. I'm going to pass through some of the pictures because I think you all know the area. So I could talk about the Makers District, and I think that would probably not be the best use of time. You've seen and unanimously recommended approval of the Makers District. One of the components of the Makers District, though, is to provide housing. And one of the things we know about housing and about office development is to have a very symbiotic relationship in this economy. And I think one of the things we've found downtown, in fact, what we've heard from almost all the employers, is there isn't enough housing. People want to live close to work. In fact, even for the Valvoline, in a somewhat suburban location, we heard a lot of people talk about the importance of being able to walk and be near things. And we think that having a lower price point near office space that we think will be coming as part of the Makers District has, again, that symbiotic relationship. They're going to be lower office rents, and they're probably going to be lower paying jobs, and we frankly have lower rents for our rentals. So we think that we're creating the kind of office product, the kind of housing product for the people that will occupy that housing product, again, or the office product, again, creating a situation where we think people ultimately will be able to live and work in the same area. It won't be the downtown, but it's the start of a new area, and we're willing to take that risk. I think you're all familiar with the Makers District, so I will move past that. We went through a number of iterations of the plan. I won't go through each one except to tell you that as recently as Friday, Obinia and Taparna and Ryan and I were working on creating elevations that we could all agree on, keeping in mind a couple of different things. The elevation that you're looking at now, and this is an earlier version, not the one before you, but it's a long building. It's a long site. There isn't really a place where you would stand to see this except here in the chambers that we're standing in today. In real life, this is not something you'll see because there isn't a place where you would stand to see it. I would also point out that we have worked with a very robust landscape palette, moving over time to a significantly greater landscape palette. We think that helps us, but we also think it helps all the people that go by the building and helps create a different character from Broadway than what exists today, which is in most cases, no landscaping at all. Again, this is an earlier version. We went through a number of versions, and we arrived on a version, that has trees on both sides, a wider sidewalk. We also have been working with economic development quite a bit to try to find a project that does a number of things. One, creates an opening to the Makers District, and we've changed a number of materials from our original submittals as a result of that, and you'll see that on the final set of conditions before you. Two, to create some identity with the Makers District, and I think what you'll see in the plans is additional signage and art locations that help identify this as the Makers District. In addition, we took out the retail that we had originally planned and have instead agreed to give the city free space so that the people who are starting in the Makers District can show their wares. I do want to be clear, there were some emails that went back and forth. We're not suggesting that the space that we would provide in a residential building is for makers themselves to make things. That would be in a different industrial building. This is an industrial building, and it isn't the construction type that would allow you to have industrial space. It would have to be built in a very different construction type, would be more expensive, and then you defeat the opportunity to have affordability. I think part of the dance that we have had with staff is to try to find a building that works in an area, we're the first in, And with that comes risk, with that comes opportunity. We think we've reset the landscape palette, really how people feel about this area, also with the art and the signage for the Makers District. And I believe staff will be here to talk a little bit about the Makers District as well, and how we work with economic development and how that works. I suspect you will have questions. I think what would make sense is for economic development to talk about the Makers District, and then for us to answer questions you might have in light of the hour, but I'm happy to do it any way you'd like, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, did you say that you want to have someone talk about the Maker District?
I think it makes sense for staff to weigh in,
I see.
given the process.
I thought you were talking about someone from your team. Okay.
Well, our opinion is pretty clear. We think that we've worked hard with staff and we've come up with a project that makes sense, that gives the city its makers space to advertise, but it wouldn't work for us, again, to have space that was industrial in nature in a residential project. We have, I guess I will speak a little more if you like, the rents that we're proposing are within the range that the city has proposed. So this is a chart we received from the city, except we added in the Park Broadway forecast rents line. The rest of the chart comes from the city of Tempe. And you can see the rents that we're proposing fall within that range. It's something we've worked very hard to do. Again, it was part of the challenge with working with staff in terms of coming up with a building design that wasn't too expensive so that we could continue to offer these rents, knowing this is something that some on the commission and certainly the council have been talking about for some time. The condition of approval that I think you received not too long ago is condition 14. It replaces the condition that is in your report, and it's something that I agree with staff on and staff agrees with us on. So it's something that we think works. And this is the elevation that you've received today that coincides with that stipulation. So, Mr. Chairman, does it make sense for staff to talk about the Makers District and how we combine?
Sure. Let's do questions for you first. Commission? Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Summers?
Just one. There's a lot of versions of the site plan going around, and I think I'm looking at the right one here, but then I look at the one on screen and it looks like that sidewalk is about as wide as the south runway at Sky Harbor. So
that's a very sensitive topic in Tempe.
I don't think that's quite right. So I'm just trying to get to what is if I'm walking along the street, you've got a setback, the landscape setback of about 13 feet and a walk of about 8 feet. That's what I'm looking at here, but yours looked a little wider.
Let us look that up and tell you exactly what it is. The sidewalk itself is 8 feet. Was that the question, or okay?
Charles, is this the north? We're looking at the rendering, and this is the northeast corner.
It is. So that's looking from Roosevelt and Broadway, north and west, actually.
Is this the area you'll be working with City of Tempe on the monument signage?
It is, yes. And then. Yes, it is.
So, sorry, just a clarification, 8 feet on Broadway, but I believe it's 6 feet on Roosevelt?
That's correct.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
So I still am a little confused by a couple dimensions I see on the site. Can you tell us how far is the building off of the street? What's that number?
One second. It's roughly 21 feet from the back of curb to the building along Broadway. Hold on. I'm 21 feet from the back. 21 feet from the back of the sidewalk to the building.
And then another 8 or 6.
8 plus landscape. Let's get this. Just give me 1 second.
There's some issues in the drawing then.
Yeah, look on attachment 32.
If you look at this one,
don't make sense.
5 foot, there's a 5 foot dimension from the street curb, and then there's an 8 foot walk dimension, which is not on the sidewalk, and then there's the 8 foot sidewalk next to that, and then next to that is a dimension that says 8 foot building setback, which adds up to 29 feet somehow.
That's the setback of the piers to the west, David. Over to the right, the main building is 21.5.
I'm not doing any math.
So it appears, obviously, the building jogs from location to location, but it's 21 feet from the back of the sidewalk to the building, and then along Broadway, an 8 foot sidewalk. And then there's an additional planting area that appears to be 8 feet from the sidewalk to the street. And then there's another 5 feet in the right of way.
All right, fair enough.
We intentionally have a pretty robust, trying to juggle a couple of different things here, trying to provide enough space that it feels like a very robust area, keeping things as close to the street as possible so it doesn't feel, ironically, given your earlier discussion, too suburban, and try to have that sort of industrial feel, but really give space for people. And we think that we've done that. We certainly have been able to put trees in any number of places to provide shade as well. Does that answer your question?
It does. I have another question, if you'll indulge me. It's awfully big along those two sides, and you've pointed out that there's not really a place that you can see it flat on, but there are places that I can drive by it and notice that I'm still driving by it. Why did the team not choose to break that mass up a little more into separate buildings?
A number of answers, I suppose, to that. Part of it is we did. It's a different design than it was. But a big part of it is we're trying to keep the design affordable. And if you want to have lower rents, you need to have a less expensive building. Obviously, given your profession, you know every one of those things that you do differently ends up adding cost. And we tried to keep a design that would meet the city's goals of being more industrial in nature, and ours keeping the cost down. If we built Class A office apartment building, we don't think that with the rents that people talk about in terms of luxury apartments, we don't think that would work here. We don't think that we would get the residents, if you're going to pay the same rent downtown, just as soon live downtown.
Fair enough.
And it is also why we have a more robust landscape plan, knowing that most of what people see and feel is along the ground floor, and having that more robust setback with more robust landscaping certainly helps with that.
Okay, Commissioner Brown.
I was going to make a comment along the same lines. It looks like it's about 500 feet along each street. So if you turn the corner, that's 1,000 feet of repetition. It's a lot of wall. And we've seen other projects, including one on Farmer that's under construction now, where the mass of the building had some big U-shaped cutouts to, I think, achieve the same density, but maybe break up that 500 feet of wall. And I'm a little disappointed in the architecture on that view. I agree the setback's nice. I mean, I'm not so fond of palm trees, but it's just a lot of building.
So as you know, I'm familiar with the building you speak of, and it does cost density, frankly, to do that, and it also costs dollars. That's not an inexpensive building. To make the rents that we have sought work, we felt we needed to have as much density as possible, obviously, so we could spread the costs and to do it in a way that's least expensive.
Will this be all wood frame, 4 stories of wood frame?
It will, yes.
So the other comment is along the same lines. On the floor plans, you've got corridors that are pretty much 500 feet of straight shot. So I think any time of day, there's going to be a lot of noise and activity. That's just a lot of corridor. Is this broken up with firewalls, and how's this work?
Yeah, it is. In fact, the building code requires that. You mentioned earlier that you might see that as a good skating opportunity, and we can certainly make sure that those doors are all open for you.
All right, other questions? Commissioner Amorosi.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that it's going into an industrial hub, and it's gray because it's industrial, but this is also supposed to be the first workforce housing units that are going into this area. And I don't see, okay, you say that you need to make it affordable, so it's this big long wall, but that doesn't stop you from breaking up the mass as different colors, different, even the space, this maker's space, which is supposed to be brand new, unique to this area, and it just dissolves into that frontage. There is nothing that invites you in and says, this is a maker's space. There's nothing that says, you know, I don't see where you're telling people, hey, this is new, come over here, you want to live here, you want to work here. It just looks too.
Are you asking for
dull.
different colors?
I'm asking for
could you give me just a second,
to break
please?
it up. If you can't break up the space physically, maybe you can do it through color and through the sidewalk treatment of the maker space. I don't see how that invites people in off the street, which is what you want to do. You want to make it walkable, then where is that?
I understand your point. I'd like to take a second. I would mention a couple of things. What you don't see now is the space for art or the space for signage. Those things aren't decided yet, and we would think those things would have, in fact, the stipulation requires us to work with staff to make those unique to the Makers District. Give me 1 second, if you could. So given that we already have a stipulation that talks about the signage and working with staff, I guess we'd be amenable to changing the colors and to having those things coincide, probably not the right word, but complement each other, changing the colors of the exterior of the building. And we would ask that maybe, as the stipulation reads, that you modify the stipulation so that in addition to working with staff on the signage location, we also work with the staff on the colors.
Was there a mandate from staff to go to gray and black? Or at least it looks black.
I wouldn't say it was a mandate in any way, shape, or form. Certainly that one of the suggestions is that we use colors that become more industrial, and black and gray in particular were discussed as some of those issues that felt more industrial, just as the condition of using steel and raw materials, and you've seen iterations of that. But we're open to discussing what that color can be. We're open, color that's not one of our bigger issues, frankly. And so we're happy to agree to a stipulation that would have us work with your staff to make some portions of it. And for example, maybe the colors along Broadway are brighter and more welcoming. And as you turn on Roosevelt, maybe the black and grays make more sense as you head into the industrial area. But we think that the use is good. We think that we meet the goals and the general plan amendment for the Makers District. So we would ask you to approve the zoning and the general plan amendment, recommend approval, and to move forward with a stipulation that would let us modify the colors. And if you have suggestions, we're happy to take them in consideration.
Thank you.
Okay. Other comments, questions? Thank you, Mr. Huell now.
Thank you. We'll see you in a few minutes.
All right, good evening, Commissioner, again here. We'll go ahead and circle back through what the applicant is proposing. The request is for a general plan land use map amendment from commercial to mixed use, and a density map amendment from no density to high density, which is up to 65 dwelling units per acre. A zoning map amendment from general industrial to MU4, which is a mixed use designation. A planned area development overlay to establish development standards. A development plan review for a new 4-story mixed use development consisting of 324 dwelling units and commercial uses. The project is located on the southwest corner of Broadway Road and Roosevelt Street. There was a neighborhood meeting for this project, and there was 3 members of the public in attendance. We went through that stuff already. We did receive public input from 2 members of the public. Both were in support of the project, and we are recommending approval of this project subject to conditions. But there are a total of 5 unique conditions, one to which under the zoning amendment and planned area development overlay, which we discussed during the study session in regards to the density for no more than 45 dwelling units per acre. As Charles discussed, the developer is providing the maker space to the city of Tempe rent-free. And then also he's going to work with us as far as creating a gateway and adding other art to the site, which is also condition number 5 here. We are also requesting that condition 14, as was discussed in study session and Charles' presentation, that if this can be read into the record as well, and if you like with modifications to paint, then we understand that as well. I can answer any questions you may have of staff.
Okay, questions for staff? Commissioner Moreau.
Last staff about the color scheme, if you're open to a more vibrant palette of colors to show that this is living space and not office space.
If you're open to additional colors, that's something I think we will be amenable to as staff. If the applicant is as well. So,
thank you.
Chairman, Commissioner Moreau, if you could give us a little bit of specificity in terms of the colors, that would be helpful, I think, to the applicant and to staff who are working towards that goal. If you wanted to see that on both street frontage, or as Mr. Humanto proposed, something on Broadway, a little bit more would be helpful for staff.
I will go home and get my color books since I'm a graphic designer, and I will bring you a palette of different styles that I think would work. How's that?
David.
Mr. Brown.
If I could chip in on the color issue, the Tempe logo has some really good color, and I'm not sure why we're so afraid of color in this town. Industrial doesn't have to be gray. I grew up in Pittsburgh. It doesn't have to be gray and dull and smoky. It can be solid and strong. Think of an Italian industrial complex where they use vibrant colors and so forth. So I would say, for starters, look at the Tempe logo and get a start.
Now I'm terrified. I just imagine an IKEA.
Well, you can only
500 feet.
You can only see about 200 of the 500 feet as you drive by. So a little color there won't hurt you.
I will be a voice of dissent and say I don't have a problem with the colors. All right. Other questions for Mr. Kingsby? Thank you. All right, public comment time, folks. We have 2 cards here. Anybody else wants to speak? Fill out a card. We'll get you up here. First to speak is, this person says they don't want to speak. They want this read into the record. Zachary Peebler says they're in support of the project. And let's see, Maria Loeffner, if you'd like to speak.
Good evening, everyone. We're very excited to be here. Maria Loeffner, City of Tempe Economic Development. I'm here representing economic development, and we are, of course, in support of this project. You heard Ms. Humantle talk about the Tempe Maker District. I know I've bored you with that over the last 2 meetings, but we're very excited about it. It's a general plan amendment that's going to go to council on Thursday and then for approval next month. And as we said, originally, the goal of this general plan amendment is to revitalize an area that is falling into a little bit of hard times. I mean, the vacancies are up and there has been no new construction for 5 years. So we see this as a welcome change to that track record. Additionally, the goal of the GPA was to revitalize the area. And by doing so, we thought, let's bring in a new land use designation, which is this mixed use / industrial. So we're keeping the industrial, but we also wanted to add the potential for other uses, namely residential, commercial, and office. So we were very excited to see Park Broadway come in with the residential uses and in a good location because it's right there on an arterial Broadway, which has, provides great access throughout the valley, as a matter of fact. So we think it's a great opportunity for such a project. Additionally, I wanted to say the workforce housing component really checks the boxes of what the community's not requirements, what our needs are. You know that we're in desperate need of workforce housing. And we were very excited when we were working with Evergreen and Mr. Humantle that they were excited to work with us on that endeavor. Finally, of course, with Tempe Maker District, we're excited about the Maker District space. We see it as a great opportunity to market Tempe-made products in our brand new Tempe Maker District. We know that there isn't going to be, it's not a workspace, it's a showcase, but we see it as a really great display opportunity, marketing opportunity for products that are made in Tempe. So we're excited about it. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
So when the Tempe Makers District came before us, I got the impression that these were going to be very mixed use, where here we're seeing, and don't get me wrong, I think we need residential in this area badly, and having the workforce component is very important. But I saw the 1,800 square feet of maker space, and I thought that's not maker space. You know, you put a coffee shop in a big residential development and you call it mixed use, and that's kind of what I saw here. And I didn't see that was really what was brought to us as the vision of the Makers District. And I worry a little bit that kind of the joke is the Farmers Arts District doesn't have arts, you know, and people say that and I don't see that component there, and I worry that that's going to happen over here. I understand that there's a lot of opportunities in that area where you can maybe reuse some buildings once things get going, but I didn't get the impression that the idea was to just add residential to the area in lieu of having any kind of a maker's component, having any kind of you know, an opportunity. And the space that's going to be provided, I have a hard time understanding how that specifically would be successful as a showcase, because it's such a small thing and it's tucked away, and that's kind of my concerns, and I kind of want to get your perspective on that.
Well, let me, I think I have 3 points then I wanted to make. First is, I think we're lucky in our Maker District in that we came up with the name after we did some research in the area, and we already have a lot of people manufacturing goods in that area. So we're naming it because it's already there. So the fact that the first project that comes in isn't providing more of that, we don't see that as a problem, because there's already a lot of that in the area. And that's why the showcase area we thought was interesting, because we might be able to take some of those goods that are being produced in the area and outside of the area, because it's all of Tempe, but the ones especially in the area, and put them inside a free space that the developer is offering. So it seemed like a very good opportunity overall for the city to capitalize on what's already there, and then using this offer that Evergreen made to present it to the public. Even if that public is only going to be in the very beginning, the residents of the space, we're still talking about over 324 people. So we think it's a good start, and we have to start somewhere. So the second thing I wanted to say is, based on that, we know that this is mostly a residential project. And when we talked about the Tempe Maker District, we're talking about a lot of different uses. But I think the point is we need to start somewhere. We were just excited that something is already has been brewing, and we can work together to make this first project happen. And we think that's going to be a catalyst for the rest of the area. In fact, we've already met with other property owners that are looking to do different things. They're bouncing some ideas around, so nothing has come forward yet. But we're already seeing some interest, and we think getting a project like this going is going to create more momentum in the area. I also wanted to say, I forgot to mention, I wanted to cop to the whole industrial thing. Economic development were the ones that came up with the idea for the coloring and the metal and the raw materials. We thought that an industrial look would be kind of a cool vibe. So It's our fault, Commissioner
I
Moreau.
don't think that was a mistake.
Thank
I have
you.
a quick follow-up. Do you have a plan for how you will program that space? You know, are you going to lease it to people, or are you going to have you're going to be managing it and bringing in people?
We have a couple of ideas. We really wanted to get through this process so that we can talk about it with Evergreen and try to figure out more of the details. We have reached out to some of the makers in Tempe, and there is interest. We don't know what it'll look like yet, or how it will be managed, but there are a lot of ideas. And it's free, so we can do a lot with free. Thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
Quick question or two. Mr. Hulemantel showed a chart. Well, you can probably answer this. He showed a chart with some numbers, which I didn't see in the proposal. Maybe it was in the documents, but I'd love to have a copy of that.
Sure.
It had the target rents and so forth, because I'm really interested in how you administer, or how they administer workforce housing. If it just becomes the cheapest apartments in town, or how does it compare to other two-story older apartments? I'd like to do a little research with those numbers if you could provide that.
Oh, absolutely. So what we did is HUD every year produces their, they figure out what the area median income is, along with all the other agencies. And our affordable housing group put together a matrix based on income. So what's your 30% of AMI, 50%, 60%, et cetera, all the way down the line to 120% AMI, and then across for people. We took that because in economic development, we deal more with rent and square foot better than income. So we turned it into a rental guide, so we could understand what does a workforce rent actually look like. And those are the maximum rents there. But it's based off of the HUD document. But I'd be happy to send that out to all of you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. I'd like to, I think we should all kind of keep an eye on how this develops.
Chairman, Commissioner Brown, actually, Maria did send it to me this morning, and I didn't want to inundate you all with a lot of emails because of the public hearing items today. But I am certainly happy because we were told to distribute it, so I'll forward it to all of you.
Thank you.
And I think it is important to reinforce what was said earlier by Mr. Mantle. We all know what creates expensive uses and when you're in development, and that is the development costs. So things that we can do to keep the costs low will help produce a better workforce rent.
Okay, other questions for Ms. Loeffner?
All right, thank
Would
you.
you like to rebut your two supporters?
I'd like to rebut, or at least answer some of the questions, but the supporters were great. I was very impressed. I hope you were as well. I would like to talk a little bit about the makerspace. And interestingly, you talked about Farmer Arts, and you may not know this, but Farmer Arts is not, the name isn't based on what was coming, it was based on what was there. Studio Productions was there for 30 years or something. And you probably don't know this, but they're some of the largest commercial artists in the country. If you've ever been to an FAO Schwartz, they built the store. They put all the stuff that you saw on the wall, they built. If you've been to a Build-A-Bear store anywhere in the world, it was built in Tempe. And the commercial artists there, the painters, the craftsmen who created the molds, they were there first. And Farmer Arts was a tribute to that. It wasn't that the first building that came in would solve all the things that made Tempe want more art. The same is true here with the Makers District. We're not going to solve all your problems with making one project is not going to bring you everything. This is not going to be a super fries where everything is in one building. It's going to be in lots of buildings. In fact, what we view and why we're willing to invest in it is that we think this is a great plan to remake a neighborhood. Some industrial, some residential, more in today's world than the past, and that's what happens with development. You evolve a place. And we see the Makers District, and we applaud the city for spending the time and energy to go down a path, which frankly isn't very easy. We've been out talking to dozens of our neighbors, and it always starts in sort of an awkward place, which is, well, I don't know. I don't think the city's really going to do anything anyway. But that isn't what's happened here. The city actually did go out and figure out a plan to change an area that for 30 years, seemingly no one cared about. I know that because I live less than a mile from the site and I drive by it all the time. And it's unfortunate because for many, many people who come into Tempe, that's the gateway. They come off the freeway and they go down Broadway and then they hit Mill or College to go to university or now rural to head up north. We want to be a part of that. And we think that being there first, look, we're hoping that the Makers District is tremendously successful. In fact, we're hoping with our dollars that that's the case. And we hope in years, probably 5 or 10, so much will have happened that it ultimately does affect our rent schedules. But we don't expect that now. We know that we're offering people the same quality of units. We're going to have the same kind of countertops, the same kind of gym, the same kind of amenities in the building, but we're going to have a building that on the outside is less expensive and the parking is less expensive. And frankly, the land is less expensive. And that's what helps us meet those rents. As far as being part of the Makers District, we think that just changing the street front alone is a significant thing. We know there are people in the area already that want to work in the Makers District and that do work in the Makers District. But if they want to live the quality of life that we're offering them at a reasonable cost, they can't do it. There aren't really options. If you tried to walk that square mile or so and tried to find a really nice apartment, I think you'd be pretty alarmed. I don't think you'd find it. In today's world, and especially if you want makers who are going to really take pride in their community, we heard from people in South Tempe that what they really want is to be able to walk around and bike around. We think the same thing is true here, only more so. And we think that while we're not offering and don't intend to offer, I feel bad that your comments sort of indicate that we were maybe promising something more than we are. I want to be super clear. We're not offering you makerspace. We think the makerspace is already south of us. We're offering a place for those people to start offering their wares. And you're right, maybe only to our own residents at first, but that's what happens. People live in an area, and if they like it, they stay, and maybe they don't stay in the same apartment, but they know more and more about it. So we think we can, in a small way, and it is a small way, but it's rent-free instead of charging rent, which is what we had originally proposed, offer people a bit of that culture. We're not going to solve it all at once, nor did we ever intend to. We think that we play a valuable role in it by changing what happens in the neighborhood, by embracing it, by being part of it, by putting the signage there, by giving the free space, by giving people a way to walk up and down, and by providing the art space. I don't know if that addresses your question, but I hope it does.
Can I follow real quick? So I do want to say that I am familiar with what was the art component in Farmer Art, and now that's being developed, so that's going away as well. So that piece is gone from from that area, which I don't think will be the case for the Makers District. I think that that's got enough saturation of spaces that will remain, and I do think that a residential component is a good piece for that area. I lived on Roosevelt and 17th Street for 12 years. Right. And so I'm very familiar with the area. It was walking distance, and it was on my way to the tasting room, Four Peaks tasting room. So I'm extremely familiar. I used to use the ATM there all the time.
I don't think it's a great idea to use the ATM at the tasting room. I know, I'm kidding.
And I do appreciate the efforts that you've gone to. I just didn't get that impression when they brought this the Makers District to us that it was going to have these strictly residential components, which that's kind of how I read this. I do understand that you're putting 1,800 square feet to the city, so I appreciate that. And I think that it's I think it's a nice development, and I think it's a component that's needed for that area.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay.
I'm grateful we didn't add a Valvoline. Thank you.
All right, commissioners. Your thoughts? Good. Running out of steam here. Commissioner Brown?
I sense that this may pass, and even if it didn't pass, I'm sure you could go to council and get it approved. I think the whole idea of the workforce housing is really sweet. It's right on. I just think that architecturally it came up a little short. It's very bulky and just a lot of it. I think more effort could have been made to break up the masses and do something that's sort of more humane. So I guess in this case, I think you're the intent's there. I'm just worried about it being the cheapest solution and it being a problem, or for the town long term.
Okay. Other thoughts? Commissioner Summers.
For me, this comes down to the city's, the valley's affordable housing issue. And a lot of the projects, the great majority of the projects we see come through this body are high-end luxury. And that leaves folks who can't afford those a little squeezed and possibly moving somewhere else. And I think I would say that's probably a big source of your makers are those folks. So I'm happy to support this. The one concern I've got is not all the colors. Sorry, Phil. It's iron 4, which comes across as close to black as you can get. Looks like somebody forgot to color it. I'm sure that might look fine when it goes up, but I worry about solar gain and somebody living in that and having to pay the AC bill.
All right, other comments? Commissioner Amorosi.
Well, you know my comments on the color, and definitely the black is scary. But I'm happy too that it's only 55 feet high. So that's kind of a human scale that I can live with. And I think once we get into some kind of breaking up that mass, I'm willing to support it because you do have to weigh the Tempe has a housing crisis problem, especially in affordable and workforce housing. And here's a solution that I think is going to jumpstart this whole area. So I'm going to support it.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Yeah, I like some of the other comments about adding in some color, but I would like us to still continue to look at approval item 14 because I think adding some higher quality materials can hopefully help out some of the issues that you've heard Commissioner Brown talk about. And I also feel like the facade is definitely very strong along Broadway. So it's
Strong in a good way or strong like too much?
strong as in a wall. So it's good that we have the setbacks and the landscape all help out, but keeping the materials has they're in condition number 14, I think will hopefully help the quality of the building.
Okay. Well, I will make a comment then. I feel very conflicted about this project. I'm very in favor of density, housing density showing up in that square mile. I have some minor misgivings about the maker display space. I mean, there was this little ASU art museum piece in Tempe Marketplace for a long time. I'm not sure if it's still there, but even that place is jam-packed with people walking right past the door. Nobody went inside there. So how do you get people to walk inside this place when there's very little foot traffic to begin with? It's nothing like the order of magnitude of Tempe Marketplace. How do you get people in there? I don't know. Good luck. I hope they figure it out.
Rewind. Tasting room.
It's on Scott.
Four Peaks tasting room.
Okay.
Throw some milk in there too.
Yeah, some cheese samples. You know, I'm not an expert on the matter. I feel some misgivings about the idea of having this much affordable housing without some mixture. I think that there's some potential pitfalls in that. I'm not sure about that. The one thing that's just really getting me is, I mean, a couple of you have kind of spoken to this as well, is the sort of magnitude of this thing. Even though it's got some pops and some colors and some materials, I see one big building and it feels oppressive to me. And I can't help but think that's going to matter to more than just nerdy architects, that the people that live there know the difference between I live in this mega building and I live in that cute one over there. You know, because at a certain point, I mean, like I've been asking myself, like, all right, if you're in Paris, you know, so much of the architecture there looks the same, and some of it's pretty big, and it doesn't feel oppressive there, and why not? And I can't articulate that well enough, but I just know when I look at this, I think, that's kind of oppressive. And no matter how many pops and colors you put in there, it still feels like it's more the same. And I can't help but think that is going to matter. That this, as a site planning exercise, this wants to be smaller buildings, and I know there's a cost issue. And okay, I just have a hard time feeling right about this. I don't know how to vote for it. All right, your other thoughts and motions?
I'll make a motion to approve Park Broadway PL 190085 with the modified condition of approval of number 14 and the staff looking at other colors palette.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Motion to approve with a couple of stipulations from Commissioner Amorosi and seconded by Vice Chair DiDomenico. All those in favor by show of hands, please. Opposed? Motion passes 4-3. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any updates on future projects? Announce what's on our schedule coming up?
Chairman and commission members, the next meeting of the commission is on October 22nd at this same location. And agenda for that, it's only one time this month in October, and the agenda will be published on October 2nd, so you should get our email at that time about our agenda. That's about it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you.